Okay guys, welcome back to another stream. As you can see, the setting is a bit different today because I am not actually at home, which is why I haven't been streaming for so long. Actually, I've been at home over the past 2 months. I've been at home for maybe about a few days. Right now I'm in Italy, so I'm streaming from the hotel. That's actually my hotel bed. Um, so this shoddy setup. So we have to make the streams happen. I came to an executive decision that if I want to be a quote unquote real streamer, that I have to stream regardless of the situation. And I need to learn how to do that. So this is to me learning to stream regardless of the circumstance. So yeah, this is why there's a bit of a different setup to my normal setup. But how's everyone doing? What have you guys been up to? I feel like I haven't streamed in like a lifetime, to be honest. And I will, because I know people have been disturbing me on Instagram via my DMs. I will be reviewing the runway shows from London Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, Paris Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week. I will be reviewing those shows eventually. So all the shows that people have asked me about, you guys know who you are. Whether it's Bottega, or people wanted my thoughts on Calvin Klein, people wanted my thoughts on Jean Paul Gaultier, people wanted my thoughts on Pio Paolo's Balenciaga. All of those are coming. They're all coming in future streams. What am I wearing? I mean, I'm just sat in my hotel room, so I'm just wearing this Martine Rose Supreme collab t-shirt and some like shorts because I'm literally in the hotel. Nothing too crazy. 7 topics in one video, tall order. Yeah, I thought since I haven't been around for a while, I might as well cover loads of different topics all at once. So yeah, that's why I'm doing so many topics all in one go, to be honest. Yeah, so if you aren't aware, we are covering quite a few topics today. We're covering the Rose sample sale that everyone's been talking about. We're looking at Miu Miu's quality issues that continue to happen. We're looking at Shein opening their first store in Paris. I'm going to be reacting to Edward Buchanan's comments. I'm also going to, that will be interesting actually, because I didn't respond to it because I needed to like collect my thoughts about that one. We're also going to be looking at H&M's high fashion rebrand. We're going to look at L'Oreal acquiring Kering Beauty and what that means for fashion. And we're also going to be looking into Demna and essentially what Demna has had to say in recent times about his old brand, Balenciaga. This isn't the collection, but can you touch briefly on H&M, Glenn Martens and Ludovic Zara and the rise of fast fashion collabs and high fashion brands and or designers? Yeah, so that's actually a topic. So one of the topics today is H&M's high fashion rebrand. And when I speak about that, I will actually cover like Ludovic de Saint-Saëns and that whole shebang. So that's the goal. That's the goal. That's the goal. H&M rebranding is news to me. Yeah, I've talked about it recently, but I guess that, you know, it's different people in the streams at different times, so I don't mind talking about it again, to be honest. Demna's in the docket. Is he? You tell me, is Demna in the docket? I don't know. You tell me, you tell me, you tell me. Um, so yeah, let me go through the comments, and then after that, we're gonna hop straight into the topics. RIP Olivier's Balmain. Yeah, they announced the new creative director today. I'm not sure how many of you have seen that, but Balmain has a new creative director. How does H&M rebrand affect COS? That's actually a really good question. I implore you to ask me that question again when we get to the section about H&M. So yeah, please ask me that question again when we get to that section. But anyway, so the first topic, let's talk about the Row. The Row had a sample sale recently. They do have these sample sales. They've had them in the past, but this year especially, there seemed to be a lot of noise and also a lot of media coverage around the Row sample sale. It makes a lot of sense. The Row has been growing as a brand, both financially and in the ether and in the realm of fashion and just culture in general. So more and more people have been more interested in buying the brand. And I think with the whole quiet luxury trend that destroyed all of our brains, I think a lot of people that maybe wouldn't know about the Row or wouldn't have any exposure to it learnt about the Row, because the Row was one of those brands that was mentioned quite regularly, to be honest, when we were talking about brands that are kind of embedded into this idea of what quiet luxury is, even though I hate that phrase because what does it really mean? But people are talking about brands like Loro Piana, they were talking about the Row. So right now I feel like the Row has gone from a super niche brand to a niche mass brand-ish. I wouldn't say it's mass market yet. If I was to ask a lot of my family members if you know what the Row is, they definitely wouldn't know what the Row is, but I definitely think it's starting to become more mainstream. So what we're going to do, we're going to react to a video via Cassie Thorpe. I'm not sure how many of you follow her, but if you don't, definitely follow her, subscribe to her channel on YouTube. But she had all the points that I wanted to make. So I was like, I might as well just react to her video. It's easier. And then I can add the points I wanted to add as we go. So yeah, let me just resize this. Let's see. I was worried I might have gotten deported. But anyway, let's watch.
Is the Row about to lose what makes them so special? The Row, when it comes to luxury fashion, this is minimalism's final boss. This is, if you know luxury. It's timeless, high quality pieces. It's a...
So while I agree with her, sorry for pausing so quickly. While I agree with Cassie, is the Row, can we call the Row if you know type of thing anymore? Can we put the Row in the category of if you know, considering how mainstream it's gone? I'll let you guys talk about that in the comments.
$3,000 sweater that in the right circles will give you a little nod of approval. It is this sort of very well calculated entity, and over the last few years the Row has really shot up in terms of how much we talk about it, in terms of how popular the brand is, and they've done this through a number of different things. Okay, the stars have aligned in such a way that we are running our mouths about the Row. This was very much a brand that was really quite under the radar, and now it really can't be described as that at all. However, I was inspired to do this video.
Okay, so she made the point. She said, yeah, we can't really describe it as niche anymore. So, yeah. She made the point.
Based on two things in particular. Number one, the absolute ginormous amount of the Row sample sale content that came out whenever that sample sale was, what, like a week ago or something like this, and also Neelam Ahuja's open letter to the Row, entitled Open Letter to the Row.
Yeah, Neelam's open letter, I can't remember how much she touches on it, but if she doesn't completely touch on it, I'll add some context. But the funny thing about sample sales that I just wanted to add on is that most times brands put garments in their sample sales that they are struggling to sell. So normally, if you're going to a sample sale, obviously if you have like an eclectic taste, then it's good. But if you like the more mainstream pieces that the Row makes, 9 times out of 10, you're not really going to find those in sample sales, which is why I always question, like, people that go to the Row sample sales and drop 20K, I question if they actually like the Row or if they just wanted the brand. They wanted to wear the brand. And so they're like, now I can kind of get loads more pieces for cheaper. Let me just buy all of them. Because it's like, for the most part, they're going to be selling clothing that's less desirable, which is why it's not selling, which is why it ends up in a sample sale. A sample sale is a good way for a luxury brand to not lose that air of exclusivity, especially when, you know, their stuff isn't going on clearance. So instead of putting your stuff on sale, you just put it in a sample sale instead. That's like a really smart way of doing it. But I do think you have to question how much these people actually truly like these brands when they're dropping insane amounts of money. Like on TikTok, I've seen people that have dropped 25K on the sample sale. Like people have dropped outrageous amounts of money.
Oh, we've got to break up. Let's discuss. We've got a lot to get through. Guys, if you are new here, my name is Cassie and I'm a self-diagnosed luxury addict. I put out videos on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays, so if you like luxury fashion, oh man, you're probably going to love it here. So head on there, subscribe, turn on the bell, become a member of our luxury addicted family.
Subscribe to Cassie.
When are we going to rehab? Never. A couple of weeks ago, the Row held a sample sale. Well, caveat, it's not technically the Row holding the sample sale. It was managed by a third party called Privé, I believe. And when it comes to sample sales, New York loves a good sample sale.
Just to pause. So someone is asking, how common are sample sales these days? I feel like they're really big in the aughts, but I rarely hear about them. So I think it depends where you live. Now, I don't live in New York, so the New Yorkers have to tell me how many sample sales there are. However, as someone that lives in London, we have loads of sample sales. There's actually an Instagram page, I've forgotten what it's called, but that Instagram page literally updates you on all the different sample sales happening in London. And it feels like there's a sample sale almost every week. So in London, at least, there are loads of sample sales, but I don't really know about, I can't speak to other cities because I live in London. So yeah, but in London, loads.
It is not uncommon for people to camp out overnight, and this was no different. There is a line standing company called, I think, the Old Line Standing Guy, something like that. I'll have the name of it on the screen. So out of the 85 first people in the Row sample sale queue, 60 of those came from this line standing company. So essentially people pay to have people stand in line for them. I believe the rate is $25 an hour or something about that.
Isn't it so insane that the Row is so hyped? People are treating it like Supreme at the height of Supreme. Like when I was younger, for people that don't know, I used to resell Supreme and it used to be like this. Like people would pay people to line up for them. People would queue the day before because you knew that there was so much money to be made. This is literally like, this is so dystopian. This is the modern version of a Supreme drop, just more expensive. You just need more capital to make money because, I mean, the Row, even on clearance, is still super expensive. So this is, this is crazy.
The most somebody was paid was $800 to stand in line, and ensure that you have got prime line standing priority such that you get in there and you get the pieces that you want, okay? It sounds ridiculous, but this is very much a thing. The Row sample sale is definitely an event. You know, I've heard mutterings about it and everything else, but definitely not to the extent that it was this year, or at least how it was shown to be on social media. Just for context, the line guys had booked out all of their line standers because of the Row sample sale. This is a hot ticket to get. They had a VIP day, which was a sort of day before the rest of the invites. I think this was sort of...
Actually, guys, I take it back. As hyped as Supreme was, I've never personally, in London, because obviously Supreme in New York might be a different vibe, I've never seen a Supreme drop in London with a line that long. That's an outrageously long line. That's insane.
VICs and celebrities that were kind of invited to that. Very hush-hush. The rest of the days followed with normal people who managed to get an invite through whatever tips and tricks and getting on their essays, good sides and whatnot. Why? To have the privilege of buying the Row pieces at, I think it was about 75% off. What kind of numbers are we talking here? Let me tell you. So, you know they had those Dune flip-flops, the ones that went viral this year and shockingly sold out in the black and red. Well, the all-black version made it into the sample sale because apparently that is too nondescript for it to sell. So those were $650. They were being sold at $162. Bags were like being sold around the $800 mark. Coats were going from like 3,000 something to just over 1,000. There was one coat that was 13,000.
So do you know the thing about sample sales and things going on sale? I learned this a long time ago when I was younger, right? About sample sales or discounts or whatever. Just buy what you like, whether it's more expensive or less expensive. If you want something that's more expensive, just save up for it. Because with these sample sales, you think to yourself, it's like a mental thing. You're like, oh, it's reduced from 3K to 1K. It's a bargain, let me buy it. But then you realize you don't actually wear it because you didn't actually want that. You didn't need that piece. So you didn't really have a use for it. There was no use case for it. You just bought it because it's on sale, it's a bargain. So it's like, and the more you do that, the more you end up with a wardrobe that, you know, you don't even wear. So people think they're saving money by buying stuff on sale. And I think you only save money that way if you're buying stuff that you actually wanted in the first place. Like if you find something you've always wanted in sale, then perfect. But if you're just buying stuff because I'm just going to go to the Rose sample sale and blow 10K, it's just you're wasting money. You're not even saving money like you think you are.
500 normal retail price, that at the sample sale was 3,375. And then the hauls came. It was primed for content. It was a load of people coming with their paper bags filled with the row wares, going through them, telling you obviously the deals they got and justifying why they bought them.
That's not very luxury of you, the row. Everyone holding their paper bags. Come on, the row. You can do better than that. For how much money people were spending, and I know obviously it's still kind of run by a third party, but still, like they could have given them like some more luxurious bags than these like paper bags. Come on, the row. You can do better. I also think that these kind of things, and I think Cassie touched on this because there was a point I wanted to make. It's kind of destroying the mystique of what the row stands for, right? Because when you go on TikTok and all you're seeing are these videos of people holding these cardboard bags, these paper bags, it just doesn't look luxury. It doesn't seem luxury. I don't get an air of luxury. And to be honest, the reason why, in a kind of funny way, I kind of make fun of people that wear the row is only because I feel like the typical the row customer, not all, don't kill me, but the typical customer of the row is just someone that like maybe got into fashion like 2 or 3 years ago, because most of the stuff that the row makes is just a dupe of Jill Sander or a dupe of Yohji Yamamoto or a dupe of Helmut Lang or a dupe of Phoebe Philo Celine. So if you went on Vinted or you went on The Real Real or you went on Grailed, you would actually find a lot of this stuff for cheaper. So the only argument you can make is, oh, I just wanted a new version. Fair enough. But outside of that, like especially the row customers that act like the row is really innovative, that's the one that kills me. And actually, I have something to talk about with this, right? Because I got into a bit of a Twitter fight about this. So Ryan Finn, for those of you that know Ryan Finn, someone who I'm a really big fan of, really respect their opinion on fashion. Someone on Twitter, so I think Ryan Finn made the point that the row is heavily inspired by Yohji Yamamoto. And when I read it, I was like, yeah, of course the row is heavily inspired by Yohji Yamamoto. Not only as the first designer I ever learned about was Yohji, so I know a lot about Yohji, and I see the inspiration in the row constantly, right? Not only do I see that, the Olsen twins have literally said themselves in an interview that they're inspired by Yohji. Let's actually play this interview for you guys.
Ingrained in us. We're really inspired by Yohji and Kong, but I guess it also goes back to, you know, Chanel. I love Gaultier. Ingrained in us. We're really...
So this information is readily available. All of it is online, right? And then you have someone that was arguing, why would the row wearer buy a Yamamoto? Two completely different aesthetics. And that shows how limited the typical customer of the row is in terms of like their knowledge of fashion or even like their understanding of fashion. Because if you're claiming to be a big fan of the row, then you have to be a fan of Yohji Yamamoto by default, because so many of the row pieces are just Yohji Yamamoto 1/1 copies. So how could you possibly not like Yohji but like the row? The only way you could think that way is if you just don't have an understanding of fashion or you don't really know like what your favorite brand, the row, is inspired by. So that's why I make fun of the row customers, because they think like this. They're like these kind of people, right? So I obviously hopped in. I hopped into the conversation and was basically saying that, well, you're just wrong. Like, Yohji literally inspires the row. And then I made this tweet where I essentially said, having fashion conversations on this app can be so limited at times because you are dealing with people that have such a limited frame of reference. How is this person really trying to argue that the row is not inspired by Yohji Yamamoto in any way? And once again, that's just me reiterating the point. And even we had someone who responded to my tweet, because the tweet actually got really big. It got like 368,000 views, which is crazy, because I was just ranting on Twitter. But Digital Cowboy, who's someone I follow on socials, he has a really good knowledge of like Japanese brands, especially. So he literally posted this image in response to my image where he was like, can you spot the difference? The first was made by Yohji Yamamoto and the second by The Row. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? How The Row literally creates one-of-one Yohji Yamamoto copies. So if you know anything about fashion, if you know anything about fashion history and you look at the archives of brands like Yohji Yamamoto, Jill Sander, Phoebe Philo-Celine, parts of Helmut Lang, you will start to see, and I mean, Phoebe Philo-Celine was inspired by Helmut Lang, so, you know, there's an alignment there, but you quickly start to see where all these clothes come from. So I just don't understand the obsession with The Row when it's like, yeah, but you could just buy the cheaper version, the Yohji, the actual original version on the Real. So that's why I really struggle to understand The Row customers sometimes. But anyway, let's continue with the Cassie Thorpe video.
Each their own, you're allowed to buy whatever you want, whatever. But I did find it quite interesting that a lot of the justifications given by people doing these hauls was that these are timeless classic pieces that I will wear forever. Now, I have a beef with the term timeless anyway, like it's a recent beef, because I think that timeless means different things to different people. And there are, you know, yes, a black cashmere sweater might be timeless to somebody, and to somebody else it's like, I actually never wear a black cashmere sweater. So here we are. We know that The Row charges luxury prices anyway. These clothes are by no means cheap or approachably priced or even on the sort of aspirational customer sort of level of luxury, right? And so even discounted, it still sounds like quite a lot. However, when it comes to these sample sales, side note, there's a lot of psychological back and forth that goes through this because you're in there, it's a sodding time limit, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a great deal. It's a $13,500 coat that I'm getting for $3,300. $3,300 is still a hell of a lot of money, but it's not $13,000, right? And so your mind starts playing games with you, blah, 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 and maybe you end up using these things a lot and wearing them and whatever, and sometimes you're just like, why did I?
That's exactly the point I was making earlier. Like, Cassie Thorpe is 100% right about this. Like, you end up wasting money at sample sales if you're buying stuff that otherwise you wouldn't buy because it just sits in your closet. So it's like, you see it as you save 2K because it's 3K reduced to 1K, but actually you've wasted 1K because you're not wearing it. So you've actually wasted 1K.
I buy that. I went to a Balenciaga sample sale ages ago. I bought a dress from it, still not worn. Anyway, the sale was so successful that it actually closed a day early. They had raced through merchandise so quickly. Loads of brands do this, as I've said, especially in New York, it's everybody. Prada had their friends and family sample sale. This entire sort of sample sale businesses that every week they've got one. 260 sample sale. And others that I can't
So just to address this, Soap, you are correct to an extent. Depends on the item, in my opinion. The Row occasionally releases a jacket or pair of loafers that I think do enough differently to justify the purchase. But most of the items are copies you can buy cheaper. Yeah, so the problem with The Row, even when they make like loafers that maybe it's not a Yohji copy, it's still the case that so many brands make loafers and so many brands make loafers that are, the construction is superior. Like in the UK, we have these like legacy storied footwear houses like John Lobb, Trickers, Gaggiano and Girling, like all these kind of, and they make footwear for women. The Row will never a day in their life make better quality footwear than these brands, right? And between all of, Churches, and between all of these companies, you're going to find loafers that look similar to the Row loafers. So then the question becomes, are you buying those loafers just because you like the design and you appreciate quality? Because if you appreciate quality, my argument would be you would go to one of those houses, or are you just buying it because it's the Row and nothing else? That's the question I have to ask.
think of under pressure here. I'm under pressure. Who else? Renee Cavill sample sale, Louboutin sample sale. There's so many, right? So why is this any different from any other brand holding a sample sale? This is what they do. Now, Amy Odell, who writes the Substack Back Row, had described the Row sample sale as the least quiet thing the Row has ever done. Quiet is the Row's middle name. It is absolutely wrapped in mystery. They famously do not allow phones during their runway shows, and that is anybody. That is the media who are there to cover it, no phones. I believe the first year they introduced this, one person, why do I want to say it was like Marie Claire or something, one of them posted it, and it was like a huge thing because you weren't allowed to have your phones in there, right? It's extremely controlled. They release the images they want to release on Vogue Runway. Nobody is there snapping a little, you know, from the side shot of a shirt, you know, flapping in the wind and posting it on their social media because they want to be able to control the perception of the brand, okay? They also, if you look at their Instagram, if you didn't know what the Row was and you looked at their Instagram.
I'm not sure if she's going to make this point, but I do think it's very fascinating considering the frenzy around this sample sale. I wonder what conversations are being had behind the scenes to control the next one. Because they want to be incognito and all this stuff, but there was absolutely nothing incognito about that sample sale. And I know they didn't like that. I know for a fact they didn't like that. So I wonder how they're going to do the next one.
You may not know that this is a clothing brand. They're sharing art and homewares and other such things, right? It's very sort of meticulously curated that it doesn't feel like every other luxury fashion brand because they don't want to be every other luxury fashion brand. All right, keep that in mind with what we're talking about. Their branding in general, there is minimal, if any, branding on any of their pieces. If you look at their bags, it is the tiniest little foil stamp, right, that you have to sort of squint and get a magnifying glass out for in order to find it, okay? It's Where's Wally, but on a Margot bag. It's mysterious, it's if you know, you know, and it kind of provides this allure where we are at a stage in technology that we see the ins and outs of every brand all the time. A lot of the big luxury brands are posting daily. You see every aspect of the collections. You see the behind the scenes. You see campaigns, whatever. And we are so used to seeing so much of brands that sometimes in the complete opposite, which is the route that the Row has gone down, has this sort of seduction about it, okay? And that obviously...
True. And I think a good part of, because when I think of the Row, once again, I don't think the Olsen twins are like innovative. We've just talked about how many designers they essentially copy. However, what I think they're really good at, they're expert curators. I think they're amazing at branding. I think they're great at market positioning. I think they understand the psychology of luxury. The fact that the more exclusive you make something, the more people fight to get in. And that creates a sort of desirability that leads to dollar signs. So I think that's something that they're really good at. But in terms of design, I just don't think there's much there.
People in. As I mentioned, over the last few years, the Row has really shot up when it comes to popularity on social media, spurred on by the crowning of the Margot bag as being the next Birkin, through their sort of very similar limited stock strategies as Hermes. You've got celebrities wearing their pieces from Jennifer Lawrence and Kendall Jenner and Zoe Kravitz and so on and so forth. On top of that, you then have the hauls. You have the product reviews on social media. You have people unbox.
So let me just expose something quickly. Not necessarily about the Row or Hermes or whatever. I just want to show you guys something. Just because one of my good friends actually is like he's a leather goods craftsman basically, and just through being around him, I've learned a lot about like what quality means in a handbag and what constitutes quality in a handbag on all those kind of things. And I just want to point some things out so you guys can look out for it. Because a lot of people say that like, Hermes is such good quality, or the Row, their bags are such good quality. And it's like, first of all, there's different kinds of like stainless steel that you can use in your hardware, right? So there's something called 904L stainless steel. 904L stainless steel is like a lot stronger than other versions of stainless steel. It has a higher content of chromium. It's more expensive to buy, obviously, way more expensive due to the higher alloy content. It doesn't tarnish as quickly as other versions of stainless steel. So these are like this is what like high quality bag. So a high quality bag should have hardware that is 904L stainless steel and it's coated in 24 karat gold. Now, let me know, come back to me and tell me how many of these luxury brands have that. Almost none. Like almost zero of the bags. And the reason why is because when you're a luxury brand and you have shareholders, it's like the consumers don't know about the kind of stainless steel that we're using. So instead of using 904L, let's use 316L stainless steel. That's a lot cheaper. And we can, considering the scale that these brands produce in, you know, they can save millions, tens of millions sometimes, just changing that hardware. And then instead of coating it with 24 karat gold, let's make it gold toned and all that sort of crap. So eventually it gets to a point where that's why when people are like, oh, Hermes is the height of quality, I'm just like, do you know what quality is? Like, do you actually know what quality is? Or are you just talking out of your ass because people have told you that Hermes is like the height of quality and like they use the best leathers and their hardware is the best? So yeah, I just wanted to point that out because like when people tell me that the Row and Hermes make the best quality bags, it's just not true. It just isn't true. Like, I'm sorry.
Their bags and spreading the word about the
Like, by the way, just to point this out, there are independent brands that talk about that their whole thing is about making quality garments and quality bags, and they do actually use things like 904L stainless steel and they coat it with 24 karat gold. But it's just not the major brands that are doing that. But there are brands that actually do that.
And that was previously extremely under wraps. The veil of this very elusive brand is being lifted off. And it's almost as though this like sample sale content has just fully gone and pulled it away. Like I said, they've been so intentional about sort of presenting themselves in a very particular way through what limited access they give us on their social media, that this sort of is starting to do the opposite to them. Okay, it's starting to feel a little bit exposed. A sample sale can dilute the perception of brands, okay? And, you know, it's similar to some brands don't have outlets because of the same thing. It's a similar strategy to certain brands will not be marked down in department stores, and that is like a thing drawn up into the contract. Certain brands don't even like to be physically put next to a sale sign, and that will be part of the contract. I found that out a few years ago and I thought that that was really quite interesting because it dilutes this sort of allure of, oh, it can go on sale.
You can only do that when you have the leverage. So if you're a young brand or you're a brand that, like the Row is hyped, so every store wants to stock the Row because they know it's going to fly off the shelves. It's going to bring, you know, foot traffic into their stores, or it's going to bring clicks onto their website. And then people wanting to buy the Row might buy other things in addition to the Row. So there's a benefit to almost every store to stock the Row because of how hyped it is. So because of that, the Row has the leverage to tell, you know, stores, well, we're just not going to stock in your store unless you do this, or you show our brand next to this brand, or you show our brand close to here. But it's very few brands. Like, I just wanted to add that context because yes, it's in the contracts, but it's very few brands that can actually do that. All the other brands get fucked, like literally. Like we've been looking at the Essence situation and how much, you know, Essence is owing these brands and stuff. So yeah.
Oh, I can wait for it. I can wait for the next sample sale. That sort of mentality. Vogue had done a bit of a write-up about the sample sale and they got a spokesperson from the sample sale management firm, Privé, and they basically said, we kind of want it to just happen and disappear as quickly as possible. They don't necessarily like the noise that comes on social media after these sample sales, especially for a brand like The Row. Why? Because it starts to feel slightly more accessible and even slightly more like mass market, right? If you look at the people who were shopping there, it's not just the Upper East Side mothers whose hefty contribution resulted in the building of a library for their child's private school. It is young girls who have the money and are dropping it at the Row sample sale as well, taken in by the hype and the so-called timelessness of the pieces. But listen, social media and hype around specifically an event can die down very quickly, okay? In a month, nobody's going to remember that, you know, there were all these sodding posts about the Row sample sale. And the Row's reputation is most likely not going to be all that damaged. However, on October the 25th, Neela Mahuja, who is a really incredible content creator. I deem her to be an expert on The Row. This woman knows what she's talking about. And in her bio, it is self-described as The Row Collector. So she released a Substack post that I will have linked below. Please go ahead and read it. I'm by no means going to summarize everything in there. She also had a follow-up piece as well, entitled Open Letter to The Row, We Need to Break Up. And this sort of summarized her experience of being a lover of the brand and how initially, you know, she started off by creating her content and the brand seemingly, as it was, you know, was implied or said, you know, really loved that and sort of wined and dined her and you know, was giving her all of these perks almost as like a thank you for being such a great, you know, unofficial brand ambassador in some ways. But it then started to get quite controlling and they sort of wanted to some level, dictate what she said in her content when referring to them or to their pieces or whatever. In some cases, even belittling her and the impact of her content, which Neelam would have sent.
Do you know what's funny about this whole situation? And for people that don't know, Neelam is like a huge The Row page. Well, was, it seems. Because it seems like she won't be buying The Row anymore. But it's like the cycle of luxury fashion, right? So it's like the brands try to control the narrative, they try to pay everyone off, and then the audience can see through that. And so a new group of people come about that aren't controlled, and then the cycle continues. So what that was in luxury fashion was we had these fashion critics like Tim Blanks and Vanessa Friedman and Kathy Horan, all these like Susie Menkes that used to, you know, just say it as it is, like Robin Gavin, they just used to say it as it is. And then the luxury fashion's way of controlling that was banning some of these journalists from the shows, paying off some of these journalists so that they can only give good reviews, threatening the magazines that they work at that they would pull advertising spend if they don't start giving positive reviews. So then what happened is you had people like me, people that created their own independent platform so they can say whatever they want. And now you have, like, at the last Bottega Veneta show, I'm not sure how many of you know this, but some content creators got paid 10K to give a positive review. So now what we have is now these brands are trying to pay the commentators money under the table. So give us a good review, guys. So then that's how, it's just the cycle. It's like a cycle, but brands don't understand that you can never really control it because the cycle always continues. Like no matter how hard you're trying, you can only say this and you can't say that. It doesn't work.
Thousands, if not tens, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars their way because she is so well educated on the brand and is so very good at sort of breaking down, okay, why you should buy this size over this size and whatever else, that I have no doubt that a lot of her content would have inspired people to buy the brand or know more about the brand and therefore want to indulge in a purchase. She shared this publicly, and this obviously opened up a conversation about relationships between brands and customers / content creators, especially as she is a customer, an appreciator, a lover of the brand, a self-described collector. Where do these things...
So I don't even understand why The Row wanted to control what Neelam was saying, because I used to watch Neelam's content. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Neelam's content, but she only speaks positively about the row because she's a fan of the row. I don't even understand what there is to control. Like, okay, maybe she might buy one piece from the row and be like, oh, the quality isn't up to par. But why does that matter? For the most part, people follow Neelam because, you know, she loves the row. So by extension, if you follow Neelam, it means that you want to learn more about the row and you want to get into the row more. So like it's so dumb. Like these brands, I don't know who works for their PR and stuff, but it's always like really silly people that work in these departments that don't have a clue what they're doing. The thing with Neelam was was genuinely posting because she loved the brand so much. They ruined that for her. The closer they got to her, she was the closest thing they had to brand evangelist. Facts, facts, like facts, like literally nothing to add. 10 out of 10, no notes.
Kind of connect the hauls and this open letter. It's quite interesting because obviously all these hauls came out. The row cannot control the type of content or even in some cases the type of customer that went to these hauls and shared their experience and their purchases. And then you have somebody like Neelam who, in my opinion, her style seems so aligned to the brand. And they're even being very dismissive to somebody like her whose content is so like, it's very refined. It's very sort of elegant in the way that she, you know, talks about things or presents things. But then you do something like this sample sale, which is so buzzworthy. These sorts of things don't seem to be all that aligned. Neelam also mentioned in that open letter that, you know, the row likes to court certain people, including the Jenners, which I thought that this was really interesting as well. Recently, Mary-Kate was seen paparazzi'd outside of a very kind of like, we would call this in English bait, like a very kind of like popular, hyped restaurant in LA with Kendall Jenner.
Oh, that's a faux pas. That's a faux pas.
Which again, doesn't seem very aligned with who they are, their brand and the mystery. Like, they would never be at like a super buzzy restaurant with paparazzi outside. They hardly even do interviews, right? And then, you know, aligning themselves with somebody like Kendall Jenner, who like, aside from nothing to do with the personality of the girl or whatever, never describe a Kardashian or a Jenner as quiet in any way. So again, that seems like a really strange sort of alignment. I'm going to use the term alignment again because apparently it's the only word I can think of. And I know that she's been wearing a lot of their stuff, and obviously I'm sure that
someone in this Eddie Bravo, this is a really good comment, by the way. This is going into TMZ Gossip Girl territory. The Rose marketing is genius. Facts, because we're all talking about it. Although for me, because I've talked about all the brands they copy, they probably won't like some of the stuff I've had to say. But who cares? I don't buy the road. They can't control me. There's nothing they can do about it. But yeah, that was
this is a wonderful
comment.
deal for her. But how does that make sense? So you've kind of got this sort of like battling thing of this brand that is very quiet and has done very well by having this allure and mystery of it, especially when a lot of brands are doing the absolute opposite, with them doing these sort of like really quite buzzworthy things, being seen with certain celebrities, doing these sort of like sample sales. Listen, this is coming from somebody who, I am not a The Row customer. Look at me. Look at what's behind me. I am not somebody who, you know, like loves minimalism or whatever. However, I can really appreciate what they've managed to build. And I think that they've done it in an extremely smart way. And it's very, very impressive. So when they're starting to do these moves that kind of goes against what the whole brand is about, how does that make any sense? Now, you might be like, yeah, well, Hermes even does sample sales and they're like the top of the sodding food chain. I know.
But this is the problem, though, when because we spoke about this before. We covered the story where the Row had investors and got like really big investment, and when that happens, now the priority is profit, and you can't continue growing financially without extending your audience to new people. It's just not possible. So as a brand grows financially, you have to start doing things that have nothing to do with the ethos of the brand. We talk about this with Maison Margiela all the time, right? Margiela is supposed to be a brand that is like does things because of the philosophy of fashion. You know, he used the stitches because he wanted a way that it could signify the brand without it being loud. But now, modern Margiela, they're putting the stitches on people's mouths as piercings, and they're putting the number system as a print on t-shirts. Like that's like so far away from the ethos of the brand. It's so far away, it's insane. But that's what you have to do if you want to keep growing and growing financially. So I think the row, as they continue to grow, it's going to be less and less kind of what the essence of the brand started with. I think that's only natural.
But Hermes doesn't do sample sales like that. Those are the most polite sample sales. It's not even a sample sale, it's an end of season, like whatever, okay? Those are the most like controlled, it's extremely civilized. You have your time slot, you go, and yes, you know, the clothes are all over the place and it's not all that, you know, sort of luxurious inside because it's a sodding sale. But even then, right, it's very strictly invite only. And to be honest with you, they're a brand on a completely different scale than the Row. For a brand that is built on the allure and the mystery and the whisper, they are very close, I think, to kind of like hitting their peak or sort of like getting past it. I have no doubt that for the next couple of years, it's still going to be on the list's top brands index. It's probably still going to have viral pieces and everything else. But if they continue doing these sorts of things, it makes them just like every other brand. And if there is one thing I will keep tooting my horn about, it's that the brands that are the most successful are the brands that know who they are and stick to their lane and have their blinders on and are not affected by what everybody else is sodding doing. So there we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know.
Oh, do I agree with that? Because the brands that make the most money, so let me tell you guys the brands that make the most money in fashion. Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton. Those are the three brands that make the most money in fashion. Chanel has sold out a million ways. Louis Vuitton, same thing. Like Louis Vuitton now has nothing to do with its heritage and like how it started and the essence of it. The only one that really still remains is Hermes. So I think for the most part, I think there are more success stories in luxury fashion of brands that go against their ethos in pursuit of higher profit margins and it working than the other way around. I think if you stick to your morals as a luxury brand, you actually just stay where you are and you never actually grow to like the multi-billion-dollar brands. You have to sell out to be a multi-billion-dollar brand, to be very honest. That's the only way. The only brand that hasn't is Hermes, and I do this because the quality of Hermes is not as good as people claim it is. And I know this because I like I told you, one of my friends, he's like a leather craftsman. So it isn't as high as, you know, it is, but I guess it's better than a lot of other luxury brands. That's why people are always ranting and raving about it. But Hermes is the only brand really you can say has like stuck to its ethos. Chanel definitely didn't, and Louis Vuitton, I don't even know where to start with that one, to be very honest. But yeah, that's the whole story about the Row. That's the whole shebang about the frenzy of the Row sample sale. Let me know if there are any closing thoughts before we move on to the next topic. Let me go to the comments. I feel like I've missed quite a few of the comments. I think Chanel has been a lot more consistent than you are suggesting. Quality is garbage, but the values and image are consistent. Yeah, fair enough. That Margiela show with the mouthpiece was a nothing burger. It was just like, okay. Fair enough. I need to reduce my volume. I think the person in the other room was banging on the wall because I'm too loud. So we might get hotel security walk in like, can you keep the noise down? I want to talk about the shoes you just bought. Are they a heritage label? I've never heard of them. Beautiful loafers. Okay, yeah, we can touch on this quickly. So the shoes I bought recently, they're by a brand called Grenson. So they've been making, and like I said, in the UK, we have like these sort of heritage footwear houses that kind of have been making shoes for like a really long time. So Grenson, I believe, has been making handmade footwear since 1866. And I got let me see if I can find them. I think they're classed as derbies. Derbies. Let me see if I can find which ones they are. Not these ones. Are they? It's really hard to tell because I don't even know what the shoes are. Okay, these are the shoes I got. So they're called the Fairfax. But I just really like the shape, and of course the quality is sensational because it's one of these like historic houses. So like you can see, it's quality when they tell you the construction. It's Goodyear welted. They're telling you what kind of sole it is. So yeah, that's the shoe I bought essentially. For anyone that was wondering, yes, they run true to size. At least for me, they run true to size. So yeah, someone said you have money. No, I just don't buy a lot of clothes. So when I buy clothes, because I've been saving, I save up for stuff that I want. Like these shoes, I wanted them for maybe like 7 to 8 months before buying them. So it's just like, yeah, I don't have a lot of shoes, I don't have a lot of clothes, but I save up for stuff that I really want. That's all. I wouldn't describe myself as rich in any way. But anyway, that's the road, that's the Grenson Fairfax. The next topic I want to talk about, this is actually really interesting, is Miu Miu. And Miu Miu continuing to have exceptionally terrible quality and just the joke of the brand that Miu Miu is starting to become. So there is an influencer called Tiffany Kim who bought Miu Miu. We've already covered the Wisdom K situation and kind of what happened there. So we'll cover this Miu Miu situation.
Not to buy ready to wear at Miu Miu. So I was a victim. I bought the viral fleece jacket. I've only had this jacket for maybe a month now. And tell me why the little scrunchy thing fell off. This is what it's supposed to look like. One day I just wanted to wear it. Noticed that it fell off. I didn't know where it went. I was cleaning the floor and I found this. I immediately texted my essay from Hawaii and she said there should be no issue, no cost to repair it. Just take it to your nearest Miu Miu in New York. Walk in, greeted by a really lovely essay. She takes my jacket and she's like, no problem, let me just run your account. Then she comes out saying, if you want your jacket repaired, there's actually a fee because Hawaii is not considered in the country.
Now, first of all, I need the Americans to explain this to me. Isn't Hawaii a state in the US? Like, isn't Hawaii a state? So if Hawaii is a state, why can this person stop banging? You're disturbing my stream. I'm not even that loud. But yeah, isn't Hawaii a state? So if Hawaii is a state, one second. Let me go and argue with this person that keeps banging. This person's pissing me off. One sec. That's a bit of a pussy move. how is this person banging on the wall, and then when I knock on their room, they literally didn't answer? Like, come on, that's a bit of a pussy move. Anyway, um, like I was saying, so isn't Hawaii a state? So if Hawaii is a state, how can they say that it's not part of the US? That doesn't make any sense to me. How could they possibly make that claim? I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. So I just don't get that. Someone was asking earlier, what is the price of the fleeces? So I'm in Italy, so obviously these prices are in euros, but I mean, you have this one in 2.5K, this one is 2K. So the Miu Miu fleeces are like really, really terrible quality and they cost outrageous amounts of money, right? Miu Miu is another one of those brands I don't really understand because most luxury brands, right, they have 3 tiers of luxury. So there is the stuff that is, the runaway pieces that aren't produced in, really high quantity. Sometimes you have to be a VIP client to get some of those items, and you have to have like an SA that can get that for you. And it's only delivered on order. So it's only the people that order it that will ever get it, or it's like really limited. That stuff is normally made in good quality because normally when the runway shows are made, they're made within the atelier. So it's made well by the people that actually craft it, and they've like looked at it, they've like worked on it for a while. So those things tend to be really good quality. Then you have like the middle tier, which is like where they start sending stuff to factory, like the more complex bags, some more like limited ready to wear pieces. Those pieces can still kind of be good quality. And then the third tier is the mass produced pieces. So those tend to be like the t-shirts with the Dior print or the Balenciaga print or the hoodies, or these like the fleeces. Because there's no, like with these fleeces, there's no design. Like if you look at the design of these fleeces, there's nothing, the sleeves aren't elongated, the body isn't different, the hood doesn't have some crazy ornament on it. It is quite literally a generic fleece with Miu Miu branding repackaged and sold for extortionate prices. That is literally what it is. So I don't know why people are shocked when these quality things happen. Obviously, I'm still covering it because it's interesting, but I don't know why people are shocked that this happens, because I think it should be obvious when you look at the clothing. But anyway, let's continue watching.
I'm sorry. I thought Hawaii was in the US. Last time I checked, and I think I learned this in 5th grade, Hawaii is state number 50. Why is this considered international? It's not even about the fee. I can pay the fee. Actually, no, I don't want to pay the fee because I literally paid like 2K for this jacket and I only wore it like twice. So I'm now patiently waiting for the Hawaii SA to message me, but this is unacceptable. I mean, objectively, so cute, very comfortable, but it's kind of giving Columbia, and Columbia probably has better quality than this. Okay, bye. This is your sign on not to buy ready to wear at Miu Miu. So I was a victim. I bought the viral.
So yeah, first of all, before we watch the part 2 of the situation, so a few things I don't understand. First of all, this is from the Miu Miu perspective. First of all, you had the Wisdom K saga where he bought something, it broke. You replaced it, it broke. So the narrative online, because Wisdom K is such a famous and big personality online, people follow his opinion, people look to his opinion on fashion, like his audience is so broad. Like someone like me, my audience is only people that are like really into fashion. Someone like Wisdom K, and I'm really happy for him because he's really successful. His audience transcends that. His audience is like people into fashion like me that follow him, and then people that are kind of trying to get into fashion, and then people that just like seeing him dress up in the way that he does. So there's so many eyeballs on that. And you cannot afford for the narrative coming from Wisdom K to be that the Miu Miu quality is terrible, to the point where he made that, I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but he made that like parody video where he went to the Miu Miu store and he was playing like funny music, like Inspector music, and then like testing the zips and stuff. And so you've already gone through all of that. Now at that point in time, after going through that, you're supposed to just scrap. You know how with like in the tech industry, like if you have Samsungs that have one fault, you have to recall all the phones. I don't know why we don't do that in fashion, where we know this batch of clothing is faulty, just recall it back. You take the loss for producing bad clothing and then produce better clothing. But they don't want to do that. So instead, they're just going to take the hit on the quality. And it seems like they're okay with that. Now, I don't understand that. I think that's very short-sighted because they're thinking, well, if we recall the garments or whatever, we have to redo this whole batch. We're going to lose millions and then our Q4 performance won't be great. Yeah, but it's better for your Q4 performance to not be great. You communicate with the audience what you've done, how you're working on the quality, you're taking steps to improve it so that long term you protect the brand. That should be the number one priority, protecting the brand. But it seems like these brands are so lost, they don't do that anymore. So they're just going to keep having people, influencers and content creators with massive audiences talking about how bad Miu Miu quality is. And eventually everyone will just be like, you're wearing Miu Miu, isn't that like the brand that has the terrible quality? It literally will become that.
Our delivery to my apartment. I wonder who it's from. There is a little note here, so let's see what it says. With our warmest thanks and appreciation, we hope that these flowers bring a touch of joy to your day. Miu Miu. From Miu Miu. Guys, I'm pretty sure they saw my video.
Why do these brands always send you useless flowers? Like this is like when Van Cleef sent that book, or why do they always send these silly ass flowers? We just want good quality clothing. Like you wouldn't need to send all these weird flowers if you just made garments that like actually didn't break after the first wear.
Video and they sent me flowers. They actually also texted me saying that they are going to get me a replacement jacket. So that's very, very good. However, if they learn a thing or two, Hawaii is in the US and it's not international.
Can you guys explain that to me once again? I still don't understand how they can claim that Hawaii is not, when it's a US state, how they can claim that that's the only state that doesn't count in their sort of US repairs program. And it's funny because when they saw the backlash from her original video, they're still sending a new one anyway. So why didn't they just repair it in the first place, not risk someone posting a video and then building on the narrative that, you know, Miu Miu quality is atrocious. You see, this is what I mean. Like, I just don't understand how, like, the PRs behind these brands think, how the brand managers think. It just does not make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense. I know, a replacement is crazy. For a fleece that costs, like, almost 3K. Absolutely outrageous. Well, I'm sure. So what I think it is, my guess is that it's more expensive to repair than it is to replace because these are mass produced, so they're made really cheaply. So you just send another one. It only costs you how much to make. So just send another one. Because if you're having to repair it and then it's just too much hassle when they can just send a new one and it doesn't cost them that much. So that's why I think they always replace these items. Like even in Wisdom K's situation, they're like, we can send replacements. They didn't fix it, they sent replacements. I think that's the reason why. They're more cheap than shipping. I wouldn't go that far. I definitely wouldn't go that far. When you buy the fakes because the quality is better. Some of these brands, like if I bought something from Miu Miu, I would like reinforce the buttons myself before wearing it, just to be sure that I'm not outside and then my buttons start popping all over the place and then I lose a button at a party and I can't find it. Usually PR is reactive, so PR only deals with backlash and they don't actually work to put systems in place to stop backlash from happening. Yeah, but that's because they're just bad at their job. Because to me, good PR should be good at controlling the narrative. And you can't control the narrative effectively if you're reactive because the narrative has already happened and now you're responding to it. But why not get ahead of it before it even goes negative? So that's something I don't really understand. But yeah, so that's more continued shenanigans from Miu Miu and their terrible quality. So yeah, that's the case. That's the case with Miu Miu. The next story I wanted to talk about, which I found quite insane actually, and I was really shocked when I saw that this was even a thing and that this was actually happening. But for those of you that don't know, Shein has opened its first store in Paris and people are rightfully angry about it. Now, why this really shocked me is because France, more than almost any country, any other country I know, normally is really against fast fashion and they put things in place to make sure that fast fashion brands can't thrive in France. Like France has always been a country that I've always deemed really tough on fast fashion compared to Italy or the UK or the US. France is always that country that was like really tough. So when I saw that Shein was opening a flagship store, I was quite shocked because it's like, just how? Like, how did they do that? Like, how the hell did they do that? That's insane. And so, of course, people have been up in arms about it. People have been protesting. The first store is actually in the BHV Marais. I think they call it the BHV, or however they pronounce it. The French people will correct me in the chat. But essentially, they launched in that department store, and in response, you have a lot of French labels that have removed their products from the department store in response to its partnership with Shein. You also have, French labels, like fashion labels also, removing their merchandise from the store in protest. Skincare owners removing their stuff from the stores in protest. So crazy, crazy scenes. I also think it's kind of dystopian, seeing France that's not supposed to be, it is the home of fashion. It's like the home of haute couture, historically and in the present day. Some of the best fashion schools still are there, like IFM. The haute couture school is still there. So it's kind of shocking when you look at these two things side by side. It's insane. And I think something that really shocked me actually about this whole Shein issue is how many people were actually like queuing to go to it. Like so many people are looking forward to it. Like people were really like queuing up and lining up outside. I was quite shocked. But yeah, there's so many videos on TikTok that I wanted to show you guys of just like people doing the different protests and like people shouting and screaming at people like, why would you buy Shein, and like all this kind of things. There were naked women who are protesting. Obviously, I won't show you that on YouTube. But yeah, there's a lot going on. So let's just like power through some of these TikToks so we can get some more like visual context. So let me play the opening clip first. Cheering is crazy. But yeah, this was the queue that I was saying was really long, like a really long queue. I was like, what? Can someone explain to me what the appeal of Shein is? I don't understand the appeal of Shein. It's horribly made clothing at insanely cheap prices, but the prices you can find clothing that cheap secondhand. And if you just spent more money, you could buy better fast fashion like Uniqlo, like Zara, like H&M. That's still bad, but the quality is significantly better than Shein. So I just don't understand the frenzy around it, why people would literally queue for hours to shop at Shein. I just don't understand. It's speechless. Their clothes actually smell like tuna. Yeah, it is truly depressing. It really, really is. But let's see some more clips about over the protests.
Combien ça va 11 euros. Inutile comme agression. Ah elle est bien poussée, pourquoi? Parce qu'il n'est pas trop clair. Oui, c'est vrai, c'est discret. Et c'est comment là-haut?
She said magnifique. That's crazy. There is nothing significant or magnificent about a Shein sweater. There is no, like, magnifique and Shein, those are two words that should never be in the same conversation, like ever. Like ever. Those should never be mentioned side by side. Yeah, literally in line to buy plastic. I know some of the people that were in line, to be fair, were like journalists who just wanted to report on what was going on. So I know quite a few people on the lines were journalists, but then a lot of other people were genuinely there to like buy Shein. We know Shein is like one of the fastest growing brands in the world. So, when people talk about sustainability, blah, 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 they love sustainability and all that sort of stuff. We know it's not true. We know someone must be lying somewhere because that's just the case, right? But yeah, it's just dystopian is why I wanted to talk about it. It's like so insane. I thought France was the country that would never allow something like that to happen, right? Because also, Shein is quite literally going to decimate the fashion system. Like, we'll get to this later, but the reason why all these fast fashion brands are rebranding is because Shein has taken their market share. So now, because it's all about what consumers are used to paying. There was a point in time in the 70s where people would spend, a week's wages on what was considered cheaper fashion, like designers. You had designers at the time like Bieber, who used to produce clothing that was really good quality, but was cheaper than a lot of the other brands. And people are used to spending more money and people knew what quality was. So that was just the market. Now you have consumers that buy Shein and they're used to spending 11 euros on a sweater. So they think that's normal, not thinking of the supply chain and how a sweater can even cost 11 euros in the first place, right? So now that consumers are used to that, a lot of the, fast fashion brands are now like the Zaras and the H&Ms. They're realizing, you know what, we actually need to rebrand and we actually need to be more luxury and sit in a different part of the market because we cannot compete with Shein. We just cannot compete with Shein. It's not possible. So that's kind of where fashion is going. And let me just show you guys some more clips of the store opening.
Vos achats, merci beaucoup. Ils nous donnent le doigt d'honneur, ils sont fous, hein. Voilà ce qu'on fait au bled, je vais marrer. Et à tous ces putains d'acheteurs et acheteuses.
Et qu'est-ce que vous attendez alors? Du moins cher, du moins cher?
Pensez au leur à Chine.
Il faut savoir que celles et ceux qui travaillent pour Shein sont payés.
Quand ils voyagent, ils prennent pas l'avion. Ils prennent l'avion.
But someone said, I wouldn't make fun of people buying the clothes. I'll focus on the brand. More people do what they can and don't see how their mass consumption is part of how their lives are getting worse. I know, but so I don't 100% blame people, but I do blame people because I have seen people online that say, I buy Shein because I can't afford anything. And we talk about this all the time. Like, it's such a flawed argument. It's such a flawed argument when, like, you can buy way better things at secondhand, or you could just spend slightly more money and buy like better fast fashion. Like I've said, Uniqlo, the Zaras, the H&M. Like, there's so many responses that I can give to that, which is why that argument doesn't make sense. So those are the people that I think about when I talk about, you know, consumers just not caring at all, like knowing what they're doing and still not caring. That's kind of what I'm referring to. But I also found this really good video on YouTube by a YouTuber called Ariel in Paris, who actually talked about the whole thing. So let's see what she has to say.
I was walking through the Marais, and from a distance, I could see these giant black flags and dark purple lights coming from the facade of the BHV, and it felt very sinister compared to the very festive decor in the shops and the department stores around the BHV. And as I got closer, I realized that I was right to feel a little bit uneasy because these giant black flags were announcing the imminent arrival of Shein to the BHV in the heart of Paris. Hi you guys, it's Ariel. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be talking about Shein, their very first physical retail store opening not only in France, but in the very center of Paris at the BHV. In today's video, I'm going to explain exactly what's happening, how we have come to this grand opening of Shein in not only France, but Paris. I want to talk about the media response as well as the responses we've received from the Shein representative in France and the owner of the BHV. And then at the end of this video, I will hopefully take you to the opening of Shein, which is happening today at 1 p.m. I want to see...
Also, something I think is important to note, just to add a bit more context before we continue watching. So Shein, yes, they've opened this store and people are protesting, but they actually plan to open 5 more stores in regional cities like Dijon, Grenoble. Like there's quite a few other places that they're planning to open. So this is not just like a Paris only thing. They're trying to expand throughout France.
What it's like, what the shop looks like, the physical products, but I'm also very curious to know how the public is reacting. I would anticipate that there will be protests. There have been protests all the way up until today. And I think that there will be a lot of media coverage from the French news. Essentially, I want to take you out and I want to show you that. I'm hoping we can go in. I was reading on the door, like they have these stickers on the doors that say you have to get a ticket or something to go. So we'll see, but that is my hope for today's video. Now, before we get into it, I do just want to say that I hope you guys know me, and you know that my values don't align with Shein in any capacity. So I do have my own bias in reporting on this story. I am someone who truly values shopping local, shopping artisanal, shopping sustainable, and certainly shopping from companies and brands that value their workers, that pay a living wage, that have safe working conditions, and that create...
So I don't know this woman, I haven't watched her content, but it's very hard to like guarantee that you're doing that, right? Unless you know the supply chain of every single brand you buy, at which point, I don't even know how that's possible.
Products that are safe for the consumer. A lot of reports have come out sort of denouncing Shein in all of these capacities, whether it comes to unsafe or even inhuman working conditions, materials, clothing materials that have been tested to ultimately contain carcinogenic and toxic chemicals in them.
Yeah, we've covered this already. I did a whole expose on this. Even the fact that some people's packages came with like bugs, like cockroaches and stuff. Like they're literally importing insects with their products. Like it's insane. People have found blood on their products, which I can imagine is probably like maybe some of the workers who have been beaten and like they're bleeding and their blood goes on the clothing, or like their finger gets caught on something and there's no health and safety standards. But yeah, it's insane.
And of course, as Shein is this ultra fast fashion company, they are extremely detrimental to the environment. So I just will always prioritize quality over quantity. And actually in the pinned comment of this video, I am going to leave a couple stores around the BHV that I would recommend that you go into instead. I myself will be boycotting the BHV. Of course, I have to go in today to show the store, but I will no longer be shopping.
One thing I know this woman is not per se French, like in terms of like French sounding and stuff. But one thing I love about people in France is they fight for what they believe in. I really admire that about people in France. Like when French people revolt, they revolt. I don't even think in the UK people know what a revolt is. Like we've just been oppressed by the monarchy for millennia. No one cares. Like people just like, yeah, the king, God save the king. Like no one cares.
Shopping here, I won't be going to the restaurants here. That's my decision, and if you feel similarly, then hopefully the resources I'll provide below can be helpful. But yeah, let's get into today's video. So on the 2nd of October, La Société des Grands Magasins, or the Society of the Grand Stores, more commonly known as the SGM, announced that Shein would officially be opening their first physical retail store in the BHV. On the 31st of October, they announced that the opening date would be the 5th of November, so today, and that Shein would be occupying the entire 6th floor of this department store, which is 1,000 meters squared of shopping space, or I believe 10,800 square feet of shopping space dedicated to Shein. And this is only the first of many Shein stores that'll be opening in France. SGM announced that there will be 7 other locations. We have them coming to Dijon, Reims, Grenoble, Angers, Le Mans, Orléans, and Limoges. Now there is a subtlety.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of they're actually expanding across France. It's not just a Paris thing for people that aren't aware.
The expansion of Shein across France. Initially, these 7 stores were intended to open in Galeries Lafayette in these different cities. However, from the get, Galeries Lafayette has been against Shein being brought to their department store. And the subtlety is that SGM owns the Galeries Lafayette buildings in these different cities. So from my understanding, SGM essentially pays to use the name and the likeness of Galeries Lafayette. But on the 4th of November, it was officially announced by Galeries Lafayette that they were ending this partnership and that all of these stores in these 7 different cities would have to change.
See, this is what I mean about French people. So the owners of the Galeries Lafayette license are willing to lose money because they don't want Shein to tarnish their name. Like, this is what I mean about French people. Like, when they don't believe in something, they don't believe in it. Like, money or no money, they don't believe in it.
Their name from Galeries Lafayette to BHV, for example. I thought this was important to mention because up until literally yesterday, it was reported that Galeries Lafayette was welcoming Shein, and that really is not the case. So why did Shein choose to open their very first retail location in Paris? The answer is twofold. I think the first reason, and the most obvious reason that was given, is that Paris is the capital of fashion, and France in general is highly influential on the fashion ecosystem. And Shein has said that they want to be a part of this ecosystem. I think as well, and it's very obvious that...
What ecosystem could Shein possibly be a part of? Next, they're going to start showing runway shows at Paris Fashion Week.
Operating not only in Paris, but in one of the most historical and beautiful department stores at the very heart of the city, lends a certain level of credibility to Shein, which they wouldn't otherwise have. Now, the second reason that Shein chose France is that...
To be very honest, do you know what the real impact of Shein going to France is? That I haven't seen, and I don't think she's going to talk about it, right? What I personally think is the real impact, and this goes back to, you know, me talking about how luxury lost its luster. Like, when you read that book, just these luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, like Dior, like Chanel, when they started outsourcing to Turkey and China and, you know, other places, Taiwan, when they started outsourcing, there were so many like craft houses that died because of it. And that's why I think that Chanel's métier is really important, but that's a whole conversation for another day. So a lot of these craftspeople go out of business the more brands and the more demand there is for people that want mass-produced products rather than handmade, handcrafted, slow-produced products. So Shein coming into France will create an ecosystem where Shein hires more people to work in an ecosystem of ultra fast fashion, which takes money away from, you know, these craft houses. It takes customers away from them, and over time, these craft houses just cease to exist because there's no demand for them anymore to produce anything, because all the brands that they used to produce for have either been pushed out of the country or they've been replaced by the likes of a Shein that has taken their market share. So to me, that's the real impact. That's why I think France should fight tooth and nail against Shein coming in, because I think when you think of France, you think of France as, you know, the capital of fashion. And I think that Shein and its ultra fast fashion model is literally in complete contrast to that.
They have a huge customer base here. 1/3 of the French population shops at Shein. They have 25 million customers in France. Shein is the 5th most popular brand in this country, which honestly really surprised me. Now, there of course has been a lot of backlash, and you can see this especially not only with the protests, but in the interviews. Like, a lot of the time, you know, news channels or reporters will host either the representative of Shein for France or the owner of the BHV, and they will ask them these hard-hitting questions and really push on all of the reasons why this is very controversial. And when it comes to the representative for Shein in France, he really pushes for this idea that Shein opening will be beneficial to the economic ecosystem in...
No, it won't be beneficial to the economic ecosystem. Obviously, it's a lie. He's just saying that because he's getting paid. But this is how it normally goes. You have a company like Shein that comes in, but Shein is actually a Chinese brand and Chinese company with majority Chinese interests, meaning that when it no longer serves Shein to be in France, because it's not a French brand and majority of their interests are not in France, they will dip and leave France to pick up the pieces, versus a crafts house that has been in France for 10 generations. They have every reason to want to stay in France and continue that legacy. So if you have Shein putting those companies out of business, long term, that's not good for the country. It's not going to help the economy of France, like they're claiming.
Paris and really any city where Shein touches, he's very adamant that Shein will bring a lot of foot traffic, and this foot traffic is a younger, more connected and international generation of shoppers. And what he says is that they will come downtown, they will come into the mall, they will do their shopping at Shein, and will have sort of this trickle-down effect on all the surrounding businesses who will benefit from all these consumers coming in.
That doesn't make any sense. If you go into Shein to buy an €11 sweater, you're not then going to dip into Jean-Paul Gaultier to buy like a €100 fragrance. Like, that's not how it works. Like, it's not the same market. That's why when you have a department store, you have to align that's why different segments, like when you go into a department store, there's normally like a luxury section, or there's like a fast fashion section where the H&Ms and Zara's are, or there's a food court. The reason they do that is for what she's describing. If you go into Dior, you're also likely to go into Gucci. So it's the same customer that buys those brands. So they have to put them together so that there's a chance that there's like cross-pollination in terms of customer base. That's not going to happen when, you know, Shein, customers are going to buy Shein garments. They're not buying anything else. They're not.
There's this one story that he tells in all of his interviews about how when they did this pop-up in Dijon, this Shein pop-up, he actually had a local businessman come in and tell him that he was so grateful for Shein because thanks to the foot traffic, he was able to like surpass his monthly sales number. Now, this representative never spoke about other businesses. We have no idea who this business owner was, but he really does rely on this one interaction that he apparently had to sort of build his storytelling about how Shein will benefit businesses in France. Now, what about the BHV? What does the owner have to say? The owner's name is Frédéric Merlin. And just coming to you as Ariel, watching his interviews is hard. He comes off as extremely arrogant, extremely sure of himself, and I do think it's a little tone deaf to completely ignore all of the different issues people are raising about Shein coming to the BHV.
I'm really curious to know what he says about Shein coming to the BHV because it's a historic, retail location, right? And I think that it does hold a sort of like reputation and cultural weight. And, being okay with diluting that by having Shein have a store there doesn't make a lot of sense unless they've been paid out the wazoo, which is probably the case because I don't see any other reason why you'd be willing to do that. But I'm curious to see the BS.
And to France. So it is a hard watch anytime I have to sit through his interviews, but he repeatedly defends working with Shein. He says he trusts the company, he trusts the products, and he says that
he trusts the company. Is this the same Shein we're talking about? Is this the same Shein that has ethical and supply chain concerns? The same Shein that has, reports of workers being overworked, working long hours, the poor working conditions, the forced labor. Like the same Shein that they discovered childlike sex dolls to the point where the French authorities had to shut down the Shein marketplace. Is this the same Shein we're talking about that he claims he trusts?
he's trying to link the world of online shopping with in-person shopping. And what I thought was really interesting is that he sort of brings this arrival of Shein back to the roots of the BHV, because the BHV stands for the Bazar de l'Hôtel de Ville, which is the bazaar of the city hall. And to him, including Shein in their department store represents a new era of the bazaar, represents going back to what it was initially intended to be, a place where every type of Parisian could come to shop. That because Shein does have such accessibly priced pieces, a new clientele will feel welcome shopping in the BHV, and that is essentially what the bazaar represents, is inclusivity and catering to all forms of Parisians, which I think at its core is a very positive message.
I think people need to reevaluate what they mean by inclusivity. I think it's become a bit of a buzz term now. I don't know if you can say it's inclusive working with a brand that literally has human rights violations attached to its name. I don't get that.
I am all for inclusivity, but I don't think that you can scream and shout about inclusivity for French people at the expense of destroying the environment and very poor working conditions, very low quality garments, low quality and potentially toxic garments. So while I do completely agree with the messaging of being inclusive, I don't think that Shein and the products they offer is inherently inclusive because their prices are so low. I think that low prices as low as Shein offers obviously has to come at the expense of someone or something in the supply chain. And to me, that's not true inclusivity. The owner of the BHV also relishes in the controversy that surrounds Shein coming to his department store. I'll put a picture or a video on screen that shows the giant poster that he put up at the front entrance of the BHV, which is a picture of him and the owner of Shein, and the text that's written says, "The poster we shouldn't have made." So he is acutely aware of the controversy surrounding Shein coming to the BHV, and he has said in interviews that playing into this controversy is a sales tactic for him. Now, 2 days before Shein was meant to open, so 2 days ago on the 3rd of November, Shein was hit with a pretty big controversy in France. It was reported that on their website, they were selling lifelike dolls of very, very young children.
Yeah, this is what I was referring
girls
to earlier.
Made of silicone, whose target consumer is pedophiles. And We know that these dolls were or are intended for sexual use because of the description, which I'll put on screen and you can read yourself. And this was a huge scandal. Like, this is extremely dangerous, unethical, and people were very rightly concerned that a company that would sell this type of product on their platform is coming to France, coming to...
Exactly, which is why I don't even know. I know the guy has been paid off, but for him to say, I trust Shein is just so obtuse. And he knows it's obtuse. But even if you want to, just support it blindly because they paid you out the wazoo, there's a better way to phrase it than say you trust Shein.
The BHV. And since this news broke, Shein has removed the doll from their website, or at least removed it being accessible to French consumers. I believe they have committed to giving the French authorities the names of all the people who purchased these dolls. And despite this controversy, the owner of BHV is still going forward with the launch date today. I will give the explanation that he shared because in his interview, he did say that he spoke with the owner of Shein. The owner of Shein was very apologetic. Of course, they have removed these dolls, that it was an error, that they're trying to increase the review process for items such as this being listed on their platform, because essentially Shein works in a way similar to Amazon, where people can, it's like a marketplace, so people can list products that they want to sell on Shein, and the products don't necessarily come from Shein itself. So that was the issue with this doll, is that another retailer posted this doll on the Shein website and it slipped through the cracks and it ended up for sale. Now, in terms of like quantifiable backlash against Shein coming to the BHV, there were, I believe, 12 brands who have decided to leave the BHV in protest. Yep. Disney also ended their partnership because Disney was supposed to do the
I talked about that earlier, that so many people in response left the department store.
Holiday window display, so that's not happening anymore. And there is a petition that's been signed by over 110,000 French people against Shein coming to France and the BHV. So that's what I can say at the moment in terms of the backlash. I think we're all waiting to see, because this is either going to be extremely beneficial financially to the BHV this holiday season, or it could swing the other way and be completely detrimental to their brand, to their history, and to their own credibility. So we'll have to see. And I think the first way we can do that is by seeing what she looks like today on opening. So I took the line 1 to Hôtel de Ville, and as I got closer to the department store, you could see many people in line to go into Shein on one side, and many protesters and journalists on the other, separated by police and barricades. I took a spin around and realized that every single entrance had police protecting and controlling entry into the space and into the BHV itself.
Someone earlier said, I did learn a bit of an economics lesson. If people wonder why countries don't ban these companies, it's because China holds a lot of manufacturing power that they can take away. I mean, that's definitely true. That's definitely true. But I don't think banning Shein is going to cause like a trade war. I think it's going to take more than that to cause like a trade war with China, to be fair.
Around back, I found a boutique called L'Appartement Français opposite the BHV, which is proudly made in France and had opened a little pop-up in protest of Shein. I decided to hop in line, which was an experience in and of itself. From this side, I got to see the protesters and City Hall, and there were 2 banners hanging from the windows protesting Shein's arrival. After 47 minutes, I made it halfway, and the rest only took me 15. After a quick bag check, I collected my ticket and headed up to the 6th floor.
just don't understand the appeal. I think that, honestly, us as human beings and consumerist culture has us absolutely cooked. It's like people would rather go to Shein and buy a billion outfits, most of them that they're not going to wear. Because I remember when I was growing up and I like got into fashion and I would like go to my friends' houses, especially like my female friends. I don't know why. I think women in general, because like I think for guys, I think what it is like for women, you can wear like a dress and like shoes or whatever, like a dress and heels. So a lot of my female friends just have loads of like loads of dresses. At the time when I was younger, they would just have loads. Most of them they've never worn before. Whereas I think guys, you buy like shirts and trousers, so they're more like interchangeable in a way. But yeah, a lot of my female friends would just have like, they would ask me because I was like seen as the fashion person. They'll be like, what should I wear? Can you tell me what to wear? And then I go into their closet and I'm like, oh, you can wear this. They're like, I haven't worn that. And I'm like, why haven't you worn it? And they're like, oh, it's not my size. I'm like, why did you buy something that's not your size? They're like, because it was on sale. I'll like lose weight and then fit into it. And I'm like, okay, like, and that just shows you how cooked we are. Like, people just buy stuff they don't need. You do not need a trillion outfits. You should buy 3 or 4 good quality dresses, 3 or 4 good quality like sweaters, and you can, if you're stylish, you can change them constantly to where it's not the same outfit. And those garments last long, and then you can build on your wardrobe from there. So even the mentality is off key. Like the way I'm seeing people carrying loads of clothing, right? It's insane.
Never ordered clothing from Shein, I didn't really know what to expect, but holding the garments in my hands for the first time and seeing the materials used, I was honestly a bit surprised that so many people wanted to shop at Shein. I had just never in my life seen clothing of
Guys, I didn't say the women point to encourage sexism in the chat. That's not what we're doing. I was just talking about consumer behavior because fashion is marketed towards women in a way that it isn't towards men. So it makes sense that more women would buy into clothing, which means that more women would like overconsume in that way. So yeah, that was the point I was making. Asking, is H&M not of similar quality? No, H&M is not like fantastic quality, but it's significantly better than Shein. Like it's significantly better. So yeah.
nearly everything I looked at was made of polyester, polyamide, or acrylic, and honestly, I found the prices unreasonable for how terrible the quality was. Take this 100% polyester winter coat, for example, at 70 euros. This is 20 euros more than what I paid for my vintage wool and cashmere long coat.
And this is exactly why when people say I buy Shein because I can't afford anything else.
I think as well that it's quite jarring to go through all 6 levels of the BHV to get into Shein. I say this because from floors 0 to 5, you're drawn in by the warm lighting, the cozy atmosphere, the wooden and stylish shelving, the high quality products, and the visual merchandising that inspires creativity. And then you get to the 6th floor where the walls are painted black and the overhead lighting was fluorescent white. The clothes are on those cheap metal racks and all of the pieces are visibly of a lesser quality. I had anticipated that the Shein store would be on those cheap metal racks and all of the
Look at how bad. Oh my gosh.
pieces are visibly of a lesser quality. I had anticipated that the Shein store would follow the same decor and setup as the rest of the department store, and the reason for this is that I thought they would really play into the more luxurious feel of the BHV to gain
No, sorry, I need to look at the stitching. Oh my god.
the department store,
look at the
and
stitching on the shoulder. Oh my god. Guys, look at how crooked the stitching is. It almost looks like a V. Look at how crooked the stitch is on that.
reason for this is that I thought they would really play into the more luxurious feel of the BHV to gain points in credibility, but I guess not. Well, that is an experience I hope I never have to repeat. Standing in line and being in the store was definitely really interesting because I got to hear all these different interviews that journalists were doing with people who were shopping or who were excited to shop at
Eric, so to respond, I would have thought Shein's prices are only possible through online shopping. Like, wouldn't having a store force them to double their prices in order to maintain their profit margin? Not necessarily, because the store is not, it's not a profit leader. Obviously, that online, you know, shop fronts are what will make most of the money. However, I think retail spaces just help cement the validity of a brand, especially considering where they're putting it. I also think they can still make significant money from the stores. Think of it, bookstores still exist for a reason. Books are sold at, you know, not that expensive prices. And Shein has coats that are 70 euros. They have pieces that are like 5 euros, but they also have like 100 euro pieces, right? So because so many people go in there with the intention of buying so many things, it's scale. They're just relying on scale to make all their money. So whereas a luxury brand has to sell like 1 or 2 items, Shein would need to sell like 100 or 200 items to be in the same position.
Shein, and every single interview they asked the exact same question, which was, why do you support Shein? Why, despite X, Y, and Z, do you still purchase at Shein? Or why don't you prioritize other brands or made in France? And the answer to this question was the same. Across the board, every single person brought up the cost of, I guess, the cost of living, but also the low cost of Shein products. And they kept saying, like, I'm not rich and rich people should stop poo-pooing Shein because that's all I can afford.
See, that's the argument. That's always the argument. It's always, I can't afford anything else. Terrible argument. Terrible argument. Terrible argument.
And I have to say that I really don't agree with this line of thinking. Now, I'm not anti-consumer. Like, I'm a consumer myself. I do some shopping from time to time. But I think that saying you support Shein because it's cheaper than more ethical and higher quality brands isn't really an honest take, because number one, you could very easily thrift pieces. You could use any of the secondhand apps like Vinted in Europe or Depop in the US.
So there's like layers of the excuses, right? So if I say, well, you can buy secondhand and you can go to a vintage shop, they'll say, well, there's no vintage shops in my area. And then I'm like, well, you're commenting in my YouTube live stream, meaning you have access to internet, meaning you have access to all the online secondhand shop fronts. I'm talking The Real, I'm talking Vinted, I'm talking Depop, I'm talking Grailed. you have access to that because you're commenting. So what's your excuse? And then that's when they don't have anything to say after that.
And you could find clothing at comparable or even cheaper prices that are much higher in quality and more ethically made. So even today, for example, I'm wearing a Shein cardigan, a Shein wool cardigan.
Also, FK, great point also. So this is another thing, right? Instead of buying 4 horrible quality dresses that will be unwearable after 3 washes each, you could just save all of that money that you spent on 4 and just buy 1 that's really good quality. And then that way, that you can have that dress that lasts years. And then you save up, you buy another dress. And then in a year's time, you have 4 really good quality dresses rather than 12 unusable ones. I don't know how people don't understand the logic, but, you know.
Shein. A Cezanne wool cardigan and a Monoprix silk and wool tank top, both of which I bought secondhand. And even if you've seen any of my vintage haul videos, I recently purchased an haute couture Givenchy wool skirt, and I got that for 40 euros, which is the same price as a polyester cardigan from Shein. So for me, that's my first answer, is if you're looking for affordable, there are so many easy ways to access secondhand fashion. Like if you like the idea of having something be sent to you, use an app. If you want to find unique pieces, go to a thrift store. And in Paris especially, there's markets, there's brocants, there's thrift stores. Like there is a number of ways that you can shop affordably without shopping at Shein. Now, let's say you don't like shopping secondhand, you don't like to wear secondhand clothing. I still have other solutions for you, because you cannot convince me that ultimately, in the long run, it will actually be more affordable to buy disposable clothing from Shein versus spending a little bit more, buying something that's better made, higher quality materials that's going to last you years.
If you like new clothing, you can go to sample sales. Like we were just talking about the row sample sale. Obviously, the row is still expensive, but all the brands at all different levels do sample sales. Now, your excuse might be, I don't live in a major city where they do sample sales. Well, learn what a proxy is. That's like all these excuses that you can always like fix it if you actually care. Like you could just pay someone to go to the sample sale for you, not even a lot of money. Like some of these like young kids, like if you pay them, because it's how much of their time is it really? Like 1 hour max, 1 to 2 hours. You pay them 20 euros to ship it to you and to stand in line and buy these things on your behalf. And you can get really good quality things. So once again, even if you don't live in a city, there's ways. It's all excuses to me. It's all excuses.
Versus lasting you a couple days. And when you have to keep replacing the low quality clothes you buy off of Shein, then it is just going to be the same price, if not more. I want to say 99% of everything I own is thrifted. I think I was just really shocked because now that I finally come face to face with Shein clothing, and I've seen the prices, which to me are unreasonable for the quality of garment, but I don't really understand why it's such a popular.
Yugi Nation, such a great point. Shopping is an addiction, so Shein is just preying on that weakness. Kind of like what drug lords do, same business model. Facts. Totally agree. 10 out of 10, no comment.
Popular brand, why I waited an hour to get into this store. But yeah, I'd be very curious to know your thoughts down below in the comments. I hope this video was interesting for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great evening.
So yeah, great video, and that's kind of the whole story on Shein, which leads us into the next topic, right? I wanted to talk about the rebranding of, fast fashion brands and kind of, why this stuff has happened. So this show that you guys are looking at, actually happened in London. This was H&M's like London fashion show. This is kind of part of H&M's rebrand into being luxury. Everyone was there. Like when I say everyone was there, everyone was there. Like all the editors, all the celebrities, people had been paid to go there. And the show itself, because I was actually there, right? The show itself was actually really good. Like they had artists, they had amazing production. It's because they have a lot of money to do these things, right? But the clothing is just H&M clothing. So it's like, I'm curious. The reason why I'm like following this like rebranding of fast fashion so closely, and I actually want to go to the shows, and I actually want to go to the events, is I'm actually trying to understand if they genuinely can successfully change the way that people perceive like a H&M, like Zara is doing it too, right? If Zara can genuinely change the way that people perceive it. Because if that's possible, that's insane. That will say a lot about like the marketing machine and how much the marketing machine can change people's thoughts about something and just like erase years and years of like human rights issues and quality issues and stuff like that. I find it so fascinating. And so like I said, great show. H&M clothes basically. And what I found really interesting about all these fast fashion brands rebranding, and this is something that I covered on my Instagram that people crucified me for, because you're working with H&M. And it's like, no, first of all, I'm working with KCD, with H&M just being one of their clients. And secondly, they paid me to talk about what was going on, which I always do anyway. So I might as well get paid to do it. Like, just the same way I'm talking, these fast fashion brands are rebranding, was exactly what I was paid to do. I don't, you can't pay me to say, oh my God, H&M is fantastic, because I'll never do that. Which is not what I did in that video either. But yeah, even with like their marketing campaigns, what I will say, and we'll talk about, because I know someone wanted me to talk about Ludovic de Saint-Saëns earlier, right? Is that they, for some weird reason, and I'm trying to understand what it is about these fast fashion brands. I don't know if it's to do with the fact that, they have the most money, so they just have the money to hire the best talent. But it seems as though they have better concepts than luxury brands. Like this campaign that I was talking about, that I talked about, was such a good concept. Like, in fact, a lot of the comments were actually like, this is such a great concept. I just didn't like that H&M was doing it, right? But it's such a great concept. So I'll show you guys like this campaign that Lias was at. And I think this is an ad for H&M.
Doing fake paparazzi. Look at her go. Alex, really, I love her. Guys, that's Awa doing the stage. And here's Victoria. Victoria was doing at Palais Tokyo this paparazzi ad. I love her. Honestly, that outfit is killing me. Look at Maria Carla. She knows how to pose for the paparazzi, really. That outfit, oh. And the girl, Mona. Look at that outfit. Paloma comes out of the car. She's the fashion girl. Are you going anywhere or you're just working for the paparazzi?
Pardon?
Look at the models doing fake.
Yo, Alex Consani is so cringe. In the best way possible. Like, what was that? Pardon? What was that? But anyway, so they did this sort of like off-duty campaign. I'll actually play the video that I made. But I've also, you'll notice this, Alex Consani has been making serious money. She's the face of every single one of these like fast fashion luxury rebrand sort of campaigns. And I think it's because Alex Consani is so associated with high fashion and all the French runway shows and all the luxury runway shows that maybe they feel like And she also won Model of the Year, right? So maybe they feel like putting Alex Consani at the as the face of these H&M campaigns and these Zara campaigns. Maybe they personally feel like that elevates it in a way. But anyway, let me play my what I said about the H&M campaign. It actually got 1.9 million views, which is insane, by the way. But let me play it. If you have noticed, but some of the top models in the world have been seen wearing H&M in the past Paris Fashion Week season. It turns out all of this is part of H&M's brand new campaign. Models are usually in a state of transit, running from show to show, showroom to showroom, and fitting to fitting, and this campaign really puts a focus on the off-duty looks that the models wear in between this shuttling. The 10 models in the campaign all selected their own outfits to match their personal taste and their personality. Mona Tuggar's look had all these layering details. Alex Consani's look donned these over-the-knee boots with the green bomber. Paloma Elsesse's look had this satin mini dress with lace trimmings. A big talking point in this campaign has been these charms. Everyone is asking, would you buy them? So let me know what you think about this campaign and H&M's overall rollout, especially considering they had the big show in London recently. So yeah, that was the video that I was paid for to talk about. You can see I didn't say anything is good about it or whatever. I'm reporting about it like I am now, so I don't know why people are up in arms about it, considering I talk about this stuff all the time anyway. But yeah, that's kind of like the campaign that I thought was like really, really interesting. And then of course, recently it was announced that Ludovic de Saint-Sernin is the next designer that's going to design like a Zara collection. We've seen the likes of Stefano Pilati design a Zara collection that a lot of people seem to like, right? So I think it was very, very interesting to watch that campaign. I'm going to play it all for you now because once again, I think it had like a really great concept. And I also think it's important to note about these campaigns that Zara and H&M also have like, H&M has H&M Atelier, I think, and Zara has like Zara Studio. So they actually, you know, people are saying, I don't think people know you're a journalist. Yeah, it's so weird, right? So like I told you guys, I want to go to these shows because I'm like, as a journalist, I genuinely want to see how exactly these fast fashion brands are rebranding, because going there means I have the first-hand knowledge and experience, and then I can relay it back to my audience. That's what journalism is. But it's so weird because like people will like film me and be like, Fashion Road Man is like going to the fast fashion show. Like he's supporting, they've paid him off. It's like, bro, what? But anyway, they have these higher brands. So these higher tier brands that they're working on. And I wonder how long they're going to separate them for, or if at some point they're just going to merge everything eventually when they've successfully rebranded, and then it's just everything H&M Atelier or whatever. That will be interesting to see. Or if they'll just have like different lines, like a Yoji has multiple lines, or a Comme des Garçons has main line and play and black and stuff like that. And it's very like, because obviously Ludovic de Saint-Sernin is from the queer community. You have Alex Consani, who's the face of it, is from the queer community. And it was kind of like the whole concept, like, call the dolls. And then the dolls kind of, it's like a call to action for the dolls. And then they all come together as like an army of dolls. And they walk with Ludovic de Saint-Sernin. And I thought that's kind of an interesting concept, especially because with the whole like protect the dolls thing being really, really popular recently, like the glamour cover. You can also see Ludovic's signatures with the little like rhinestones. Very, very Ludovic in the collection. Yeah, protect the dolls, call the dolls, I'm into it, yeah. So I thought the concept was interesting, but what it really showed to me, or kind of what it got me thinking about, is this idea of why is it that these fast fashion brands have such interesting campaigns and everything around it, minus the clothing, is so good, right? So my guess is that when you're a luxury brand, especially when you're like a legacy house, your brand is so predicated on being so like associated with like rich people and upper class lifestyle that queerness does not really fit into that. And so like all these ideas or even like a paparazzi thing, it's too, what's the word? I don't want to say it's too fun because it's not that luxury brands can't be fun, but it's too out there for luxury brands. It's too in your face for luxury brands. I think that's where they lose because I think that these luxury brands sometimes overthink their marketing a bit much. I think people actually would like some fun from the luxury brands. Yeah, too gaudy also, yeah. But I do actually think people would look forward to seeing a lot of fun campaigns from these luxury houses. They're just in too much in their head and they think, yeah, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. We're going to alienate this audience or we're going to alienate that audience. And it's like, they're so scared to like stand for anything or to support anything or to have any specific point of view because they're just so scared that like some audience is going to be alienated. And like literally, I did not see anything negative about this campaign in a sense of like, I don't think Zara alienated their audience all of a sudden because, you know, they're highlighting trans women in a campaign and like the queer community. I just didn't see any of that. This is so Kardashian coded. So yeah, I kind of just wanted to touch up on that because I just think it's so interesting how these brands continue to fight for their rights to, you know, just talk about all this sort of stuff and to try and be luxury brands and to rebrand because Shein has the chance to put a lot of them out of business. But let me know what you guys think before we move on to the next topic. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. I'm not mad at it at all. It's just not for me as a consumer. Yep, stand for nothing, fall for anything. Facts. Let's see. What else have people said? Just saw someone I know in the ad. Fair enough. It's all a part of the industry. Just because you don't agree with it doesn't mean you shouldn't explore the depths of your field. Oh yeah, so a lot of people, I think once again, it's because people don't understand what the role of a journalist is. Because I think you're referring to like me going to these shows for like fast fashion brands. Like I'm publicly against what fast fashion is. People know this. So if you see me there, obviously I'm doing research as a journalist. Like people just think if you're there, you must be paid by the company directly, and then two, like you're supporting that just by being there. When I was at the show, I didn't post about the show, I didn't platform them. When I did work with like KCD, because they wanted me to talk about it, it's like, well, I'm going to talk about it anyway, so I might as well get paid to do it. I didn't say it was good. I'm never going to get paid to say something's good or bad. You can't pay me to have an opinion on something. I think at that point, you're no longer a journalist. You're like a paid, I don't even know what the phrase to use is. Like it means your opinion can be bought. My opinion can't be bought. And it's quite obvious if you watch that ad and you see that I didn't actually say it's good. Like I did not, there's not one thing I said was good. So I just reported on it like I always do. So I think a lot of people just struggle with that. Like not understanding what a journalist actually is. Fashion Roadman, the journalist rebranding arc. I respect Ludovic de Saint-Senon's work. I hope this collection is actually good. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to see kind of what the products are actually like in hand. So we'll see. Yeah, everybody's got a price. Oh gosh, that's funny. Okay, but anyway, that's the whole story on fast fashion brands rebranding, and I will continue to follow this story. So if you see me at any of these fast fashion events, now that I've explained it, please don't say something stupid and be like, oh, he's supporting fast fashion. It's like, mate, I'm literally documenting how these brands are rebranding and trying to be luxury brands. But anyway, next thing I wanted to talk about. This. So I wanted to take some time to actually like gather my thoughts before I cover this, to be honest. But I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this, but essentially, Edward Buchanan, who was the first ready-to-wear designer at Bottega Veneta, a designer I respect. I also respect him as right now he's an editor at The Perfect magazine. I see him at a lot of the shows, actually, whether it's in Paris or London. But essentially, I obviously gave a really bad review about the Jean-Paul Gaultier debut collection, right, by Duran Lantink. And many other people gave bad reviews about the Jean-Paul Gaultier collection, about Duran Lantink. And then there were a lot of industry people, including like Edward, and I'm going to read this, that basically said something that I just don't agree with. And I'll explain to you why I don't agree with it. So we're going to read what he said first, and then I'll basically say my thoughts. So he said, bedside critiques of fashion shows by way of runway photos and live streams can be a dangerous way to judge a creator's work. It never ever equates to the physical experience of being there and seeing and touching the work. Please be careful with your hurtful language and give these designers time and respect to work. They are human. And by all means, please brush up on your culture and fashion history before attempting to criticize the present for clickbait. And I don't mean a ChatGPT search. Study, play nice, y'all. Now, I disagree with this for so many reasons. Let's just get into it. Let me just get into all the reasons why I disagree with this. So, first of all, I think there's actually a lot of validity to bedside critics, as he calls them. I'm personally not a bedside critic, so I don't even think I was mentioning that. Maybe the live streams is a dig at me, but the bedside critic, you can't call me that. I worked at BOF, I worked at Vogue Runway, I still go to shows at Fashion Week now. You know, it is what it is. But anyway, even though I'm not part of that, I think people that critique from their bedside are actually very valuable if they're talking about people that have never been to the shows, the kind of people that have no connection to fashion. First of all, I think that their opinion is very valuable because they aren't tainted by the industry, so they kind of have like an outside looking in view, which I think could be very valuable. Also, they aren't compromised the way that a lot of these journalists are. I talk about this all the time, I'll talk about it again. Perfect magazine, which is the magazine that Edward Buchanan works for, has advertisers. So he cannot be critical about any company that advertises in a Perfect magazine, which means his opinion on any of those brands that advertise in Perfect magazine is basically like, almost like should be considered less because he physically cannot be negative about those brands. So a lot of these journalists that kind of have this like elitist way of saying things are actually compromised because for that reason. Me, on the other hand, I'm independent. I can say, I hate Jean-Paul Gaultier and nothing's going to happen. No one's going to pull advertiser revenue because they don't pay my bills, right? So someone like me, I have more leeway to actually be honest about fashion in a way that a lot of these journalists that think that their opinion is more valid can't be, right? So that's why, first of all, I don't agree with that. Also, this idea that, you know, you can't be negative about something, to me, doesn't make any sense. Some collections are just bad. It just is what it is. That's life. Like, obviously, it's subjective, but that's why there needs to be, you know, some sort of understanding that you can say something is bad or you can like something. Both things can exist and can coexist in the world. To just have this blind, hairy-fairy, la-di-da, everything is good, everything is perfect, I just don't think that helps anyone. It doesn't help the designers because the designers then design crap and no one tells them that they're designing crap. It doesn't help fashion because I think that critique helps, push designers forward and it helps push fashion forward in a way. So it actually doesn't help anyone. So this idea that, all of us have to be la-di-da-di-da about these collections, to me, just doesn't make any sense. And to be honest, he said creators are the one demographic who ought to be ruthlessly scrutinized because they're literally getting paid to have fun. Yeah, facts. I see where you're coming from. They are part of the democratization of fashion critique. I think Edward is speaking from the dark side of that. We see every day, case in point, the Yoji incident. Yeah, so of course, if people are spreading misinformation, fair enough. But the people that I saw critiquing the Jean-Paul Gaultier collection are not people that know nothing about fashion. You had old loser in Brooklyn. You had people like me. You had people like Haute Le Mode. You had people like I Deserve Couture. You had people like Lias. All of us go to the shows in Paris. We go to the shows in Milan. We go to the shows in London. It's not like we also know about fashion, like we work in fashion. So this idea that, the people that had the most viral critiques on Jean-Paul Gaultier were us. So, okay, cool, there are some people that are just negative for negative's sake. They have no cultural context. They don't understand fashion history. But I don't think that's what he was referring to, personally. And I thought it would be a good exercise to actually look at this collection, right? And actually talk about it in some sense, because I think his point makes even less sense when we talk about it. First of all, let me just tell you why Edward is wrong again. So first of all, Duran Lantink came out in an interview and was like, I'm not going to look at the archives, I'm not referencing the archives. Now, to me, that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't align with what Edward is saying, because Edward is saying that, some of us don't understand like the cultural context or the history of Jean-Paul Gaultier, right? But Duran himself said, I'm not referencing the archives. He said, I didn't look into the archives of Jean-Paul Gaultier to create this collection, right? I just wanted to channel kind of what I think about Jean-Paul Gaultier. And it shows. That's why he didn't channel the energy. And I'll explain to you why he didn't. Now, Jean-Paul Gaultier is famously, referred to as like the king of camp, right? And the thing about being the king of camp, so this is what people don't understand. And I'll talk about journalism and I'll relay this back into fashion design. So as a journalist, you cannot be humorous with your journalism if you're not a good writer. You have to learn how to be a good writer first, and then you can add humor. Because when you're a good writer and then you make jokes in your writing, it comes across funny and it comes across intelligent, right? But if you aren't a good writer and you try to be witty, it's going to not be funny and it's going to read bad, and people might even start misconstruing what you're saying because you're not a good writer. So it's the same with fashion. If you want to be camp, you have to be intelligent with the way that you're being camp. The garments have to be constructed perfectly. I mean, Jean-Paul Gaultier, yes, he, was this like crazy person. However, he was very provocative. He liked to, provoke people with his work. But when you look at the essence of what his work was, the construction was absolutely flawless. The craft of the clothes was amazing. The humor made sense. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't crass. Like when you look at those tattoo collections, right, which was one of the references here, he wasn't tattooing crass things. He was tattooing funny things, humorous things, not completely crass things, right? So there's a difference between, trying to be provocative because you're being humorous and being provocative for shock value. In this, you're being, like Duran is being provocative by trying to create shock value. This is not humorous. There's nothing funny or humorous about a dick, like a dick print. There's just nothing funny about it. It's not humorous. There's no joke. It's just shock value. That's all it is. That is literally all it is. So that's why I don't understand Edward saying like people need to understand history or historical context. It's like, no, it's just bad. It's camp done wrong. It's provocative fashion done wrong. Like, it's not intelligent. The construction of the garments in this collection are not flawless. I had a lot of friends that went to the Risi, and I went through them at the Risi. The construction is not that great either. There's no sophistication. The thing about Jean-Paul Gaultier's work is that, yes, you know, he was provocative, but it was also sophisticated in a way. There's no sophistication in this collection. And so this whole idea that, you know, people, going back to it, he said, by all means, brush up on your culture and fashion history before attempting to criticize the present for clickbait. We can say the same thing about Duran Lontic, who said himself, I'm not referencing the archives. I did not say this. He said it. Maybe he needs to go into the archives more to truly understand the essence of what Jean-Paul Gaultier represents. Because if he did, maybe he wouldn't produce a collection like that. And so that's why I just don't agree with anything that Edward said. Like, I understand where he's coming from, but I just don't agree with anything that he said. And this whole notion that we aren't allowed to say anything negative and la-di-da, especially coming from someone that works for a magazine that is compromised because they have advertisers. So they can't be critical about a lot of brands because they are literally compromised. My platform is not paid for by any fashion brand, meaning I can actually talk about any fashion brand in the whole fashion industry the way I want. He can't do that. So to almost act like there's less validity to people who, you know, what he calls bedside critics and people that give bedside critiques, I think is a bit silly. I do think it's a bit silly, to be honest. Luke said some of those 90s Jean-Paul Gaultier collections are so spectacular and still hold up extraordinarily well. Yeah, 100%. You had to be there, bro. Attitude to fashion would be a step in the wrong direction. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And while I'm a big fan of Edward, I always will be, I just think that this specific statement was a hot and a huge miss. A huge, huge miss. Like a massive miss, to be very honest with you. He's coming from a slightly jaded place, maybe, but I can't help but understand his part about touching the work. I mean, it depends, right? Because it depends on what you're critiquing. Like, I'm critiquing the validity of what was being presented in terms of the ideas. You don't need to touch the work to know the validity of that. And like, if people need to touch the work to understand that, it means you're just not a good designer, because you had the runway show, you had the press release, you had the show invites to tell that story, you had the clothing, you choose the way that the video is presented and filmed. It's your choice. So we have all of those to understand the concept. If you can't push the concept forward with all of those elements, then you're just not a good designer. That's just what it means. You're just not good at what you do. You're not good at your job. So the only thing you can understand by touching the clothing is the quality and garment construction, which like I said, I know someone personally that went to the Risi, that is a designer that knows about garment construction and told me how bad it is. That's why I can now say, oh, it's also not made that well. If everybody can't enjoy and or critique it, then what's the point of creating it, in my opinion? It should be accessible to some extent. Yeah, 100%. When you critique design, you critique line, shape, color, form, not technique and construction. Exactly. Exactly. You can gauge how well something accomplishes its own goals. Yeah, facts. Some people are going to be uneducated, but those people, for the most part, aren't openly critiquing these collections with significant detail. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is also funny, right? You can't comment on Miu Miu quality unless you stood over a 10-year-old Chinese sweatshop worker and told her that that her break is over, right? Like, you don't need to touch Miu Miu clothing to know that it's badly constructed. We have so many videos online of people's clothing falling apart. Do you physically need to go into a Miu Miu store and touch the fabric and be like, okay, now I'm sure that it's badly made before you know that the quality is bad? So it just doesn't make sense. I don't know. I'm taking it as him talking about the evil motherfuckers on the internet. I would expect someone like you, Aya, to say something heinous. I guess you mean you wouldn't expect, but I do think that there should never be an expectation that the average Joe should be expected to be polite. Yeah, 100%. Who the hell does he think he's even talking to? People are very aware of Gaultier's legacy, and he's ouvert. He sounds like a total jackass and very clear to himself. Damn, that's a bit mean, Luke. I wouldn't go that far, but I just don't agree with what he was saying, and I think like everyone knows that like Jean-Paul Gaultier is an enfant. Like, first of all, I hate it. I do hate it when people try to like act like very basic information is like not known by everyone. First of all, one of the most famous designers as far as like Gen Z goes, like I'm Gen Z, the designers that Gen Zs talk about the most are Margiela, like Martin Margiela himself, Demna, like Margiela, Demna, and Eddie Salman. Like, especially men, Gen Z men, those are like the three goats as far as every Gen Z man is concerned. Now, if you just learn about Margiela slightly, you know that he worked for Jean-Paul Gaultier. So a lot of the Margiela stands, by default, had to learn about Jean-Paul Gaultier to some extent because Margiela worked for him. Demna worked at Margiela. So once again, there goes the cultural context once again. Who's Margiela? What is Margiela? What is this brand? They learn about the brand. They learn about Jean-Paul Gaultier. So how can you possibly think that people don't know about, like, even the tattoo collections, right? Every celebrity under the sun has worn some form of Jean-Paul Gaultier like tattoo collection. And they even brought them back and they were big. There was even a time when everyone was talking about like vintage Jean-Paul Gaultier. It was like a whole thing. I remember rappers like Lanty Fo was talking about Jean-Paul Gaultier. Like everyone was talking about it. So to think that, you know, people don't know about the history of Jean-Paul Gaultier when that is such basic like fashion 101. This is like one of the most iconic fashion designers in all of fashion. It's not like we're talking about Madeleine Vionnet or Paul Poiret or like Charles Frederick Worth, where like the everyday person won't know about these designers, right? Sonia Rykiel. We're not talking about these kind of designers. Like Jean-Paul Gaultier, that's not that everyone knows about. If you have a mild like knowledge in fashion, you've seen the Jean-Paul Gaultier 90s shows, like you've seen these collections, right? This is not some like niche designer that people need to brush up on their fashion history for. Like it's not, I don't understand that. I'd even say people are more aware of Gaultier than Eddie and Margiela combined. I'm not sure about the Eddie and Margiela combined. Maybe an argument could be made for Eddie Salman, but I don't think that people know more about Gaultier than Margiela. I'm not sure. I think an argument could be made about that. I mean, people know about the name Gaultier because of like the perfumes and stuff, definitely more than Margiela. But in terms of like, I'm talking about knowledge of the history of the brands. But yeah, the perfumes are huge. Yeah, Gaultier's fame does eclipse fashion because of like the perfumes and stuff like that. Yeah, Jean-Paul Gaultier perfumes are way more famous than Margiela perfumes. Like it's not even close. And yeah, in pop culture too. Like I said, rappers have been rapping about Jean-Paul Gaultier. Singers have been singing about Jean-Paul Gaultier. So to think that we need to brush up on our history on Gaultier, I just think is a bit strange to say that, to be honest. I don't understand that. Gaultier is definitely more popular among the LGBTs than Margiela, Eddie, or Demna. Yeah, for sure. agreed. Agreed. Maybe an argument could be made for Margiela, but Eddie Slimane and Demna are definitely more of like a... Most of the people that are like stans of Eddie Slimane and Demna are like straight men. For sure. For sure. But yeah, anyway, I just kind of wanted to touch on that because I just didn't agree with that. And obviously, he made this statement a while ago. Literally, you can see it on October 6th. So this is like over a month ago. But I didn't just want to like... Because when I read it, I was like going to make a reel about it. But I was like, okay, let me just like wait. And then the next time I hop on a stream, I'll like talk about it and give my thoughts on what I think about what Edward Buchanan said. Any closing thoughts before we go on to the next topic? This is actually turning out to be a really long stream, but I guess you guys deserve it because I've been MIA for forever. The only designer to be named in EastEnders. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't even know that Jean-Paul Gaultier has been named in EastEnders. No way. So the McQueen possible sale, I was going to touch on that in the next topic, to be honest. So okay, let's talk about the next topic. So the next topic is kind of what's going on at Kering. So of course I'm talking about this story to kind of kick it off, but really a lot of stuff has been going on at Kering. Of course, in recent times, we've seen all the moves that Kering has been making, you know, having new creative directors at their brands, whether we're talking about Luis Trotta at Bottega Veneta or Demna at Gucci and kind of his first collection for Gucci, even though he claims it's not a real collection, but that's neither here nor there. So we've seen a lot of movement at, you know, Kering changing the CMOs at Gucci, changing the CEO. But something that really surprised me amongst all these moves is the fact that L'Oreal is going to acquire Kering Beauty in 2026 for $4.6 billion. Now, let me tell you why this is really significant. So I've been covering this before, but I know every single live stream, there's new people that don't have the context, so I'll explain it. So Kering didn't really focus on their beauty products a lot. And I always used to talk about, I don't know why they don't focus on it more. It's a massive cash cow. LVMH have vertically integrated their whole like fragrance business. That's why they make so much money. Why doesn't Kering do it? Why doesn't Kering do it? And then we saw Kering buy Creed, which is, you know, one of those big hyped, you know, niche brands that sells perfumes for really high prices. And Creed Aventus is like one of those like, you know, fragrances that took the fragrance world by storm. So they bought Creed and then they launched Kering Beauty, right? So Kering Beauty was supposed to be their answer to what I've always wondered, why don't they do it, right? So they launched their fragrances with Balenciaga. So Balenciaga launched a fragrance line under them. They were talking about launching a fragrance line under McQueen. And they were also talking about not renewing their licenses. So some of their brands, like Gucci, which is their biggest brand, is licensed to Coty, right? So Coty owns the license to sell their fragrances and it expires. So they were talking about not renewing it so they could put that under Kering Beauty. And then over time, they would gain control over their fragrances and then, you know, make more money because they take more of the profit margins because they're not licensing out their name. Now, this is a lot easier said than done because when it comes to building your own fragrance infrastructure, which is why almost no one does it, but I felt like Kering could do it because it's so big, like LVMH, you have to be like a multi-billion-dollar company before you start thinking about making your own like huge fragrance lines and fragrance group within your company because the initial investment is so huge, like it's insane. Investing in something like this is not a short-term thing. It should be seen as like a 10-year plus thing before you start seeing the benefits. But unfortunately, because Kering is in this, like, we need to protect the shareholders, we need to appease the shareholders, we need to make sure that our, finances are looking up every quarter. So instead of them just weathering the storm, knowing fully well that in 10 years they're going to make stupid money through Kering Beauty, they sold the portfolio to L'Oreal. And it's just like, like you can't even feel sorry for them anymore. They literally sold it. And like, I'll show you guys Coty, for example. These are all the brands that Coty currently owns the license to sell their fragrances for. So obviously Gucci being the main one as far as Kering is concerned. But these are all the brands that they own the license to sell. Like it's quite a lot. Like Jil Sander, Davidoff, David Beckham, Chloe, Calvin Klein, Burberry, Adidas, Vera Wang, Tiffany and Co. Like they have a lot of brands. There's a lot of brands here. Gucci, Hugo Boss. So a lot. So L'Oreal acquiring Kering is very significant, not just for Kering, but also in the fragrance industry, right? Because as they've mentioned in this BOF article, the Coty license actually expires in 2028, and Coty is shook because I think they even said it in this article that the Gucci license is like majority of their business. Like it accounts for such a high percentage of Coty's business that if they lose that contract, they're basically fucked. Let me see if was it in this article or did I read it somewhere else? But anyway, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think I remember reading that the Gucci license is 30% of Coty's business. So when this expires, L'Oreal is obviously not renewing it because L'Oreal is a direct competitor to Coty. So they're going to be licking their lips waiting for this to expire, and they're about to make bank owning that license, right? So yeah, Coty is cooked. Coty is cooked and Kering is cooked all in one swoop from L'Oreal, which is absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. However, like they've mentioned here, the companies will also launch what they have described as a 50-50 joint venture to explore business opportunities in beauty and wellness. So even though L'Oreal is going to take over Kering's beauty portfolio and own the rights to all those fragrances, Kering is going to benefit by working closely with L'Oreal, and moving forward, they're going to do quite a few 50-50 joint ventures that I'm hoping, for their own sake, can make Kering some significant amount of money to justify them selling to me what I thought was their future. They literally just like forked away their future. So it's absolutely insane. But those corporate backrooms are on fire at Coty. Yeah, they are definitely stressed. And that goes into what Luke was saying we should talk about, right? Where Kering is also exploring the sale of McQueen, because Kering right now it seems as though they're looking for cash. They need cash in the interim, right? To focus on Gucci and revamping Gucci and throwing everything at Gucci. So they're selling McQueen, they're selling Kering Beauty, and it just seems like if they're not careful, and if this Gucci experiment doesn't work with Demna, that might be the end of Kering as we know it, to be very honest. And then we might have an LVMH monopoly with beauty companies being the new conglomerates. I think that's where fashion is going anyway, where like, is it Estee Lauder that owns Tom Ford? Let me actually Google this so I don't say, yeah. So they do own Tom Ford. So these beauty brands, because the beauty side of a lot of these businesses makes the most money, these beauty conglomerates are the ones that can now afford to acquire these luxury brands. So I think more and more we're going to see L'Oreal acquiring fashion brands and Estee Lauder just buying all of them up. We already see this in fashion anyway. Puig is a good example. A lot of you might not be too familiar with a lot of these conglomerates and who they own, so I'll show you guys Puig. But Puig owns Jean Paul Gaultier. They own Dries Van Noten, they own Carolina Herrera, they own Rebrand, which also makes sense. Why? Because they are a fragrance company. It makes sense, well, a beauty company anyway, like cosmetics company. It makes sense why their fashion brands tend to have some of the strongest fragrance lines. The only issue, like you can see here, so they own Byredo, Carolina Herrera, Dries Van Noten, Charlotte Tilbury, Jean-Paul Gaultier, L'Artisan Parfumeur, Nina Ricci, Penhaligon's, Rabanne, Christian Louboutin. So the only issue I have with Puig is that Puig is really good at making fragrance lines that makes loads of money for these brands, but they're not good at the clothing side. They're not good at the fashion side of things. So if you look at their portfolio, Carolina Herrera, it's getting to the point where people don't really talk about the clothing of Carolina Herrera anymore. We just talk about the fragrances. Yes, they make a lot of money, but you know, what happens when Carolina Herrera ceases to be like a clothing brand? Same thing with Jean-Paul Gaultier. I think more people think about the fragrances with Jean-Paul Gaultier than they think about the clothes. Same with Nina Ricci, same with Rabanne. Like people think of Paco Rabanne 1 million before they think of the clothing, right? And I hope that Dries Van Noten doesn't go in that direction. Of course, I think that Puig launched a sensational fragrance line through Dries Van Noten. And I think that it seems that things are going well there. I mean, Julian Klausner is the creative director. I think that he has been doing amazing things there. And I just hope that it stays the same. I would hate to see Dries Van Noten be a brand that the clothing just ceases to exist and the clothing just becomes like a shell of itself. And then when you're like, do you know Dries Van Noten? They're like, yeah, that perfume brand. I wouldn't want that to happen to the brand, to be honest. So yeah, they couldn't care less about clothes. Yeah, facts. I think that's where fashion is going, unfortunately. I think that the beauty conglomerates are taking over the game. They're taking over fashion sooner than later. I think if this whole Gucci experiment doesn't work, the craziest thing that we'll see is probably the fact that LVMH will buy Gucci finally. I'm not sure how many of you are actually aware of like the fight that happened between Bernard Arnault and Francois Pinault, but that was like a whole story and a whole thing. For those of you that are on Patreon, watch, or channel memberships, watch the videos I made on the Kingdom of Dreams series, because we talk about that in those videos. But yeah, it's Bernard Arnault, knowing how petty he is, would love to swoop in and buy Gucci. He would love that. Does feel like we're getting dangerously close to that with the number of brands, 100%. PR is a staff function. The blame shouldn't land on PR then, but rather CEO and strategy. I think it's on all of them altogether, to be honest. If LVMH were to acquire McQueen, do you think it would be good for McQueen itself? I don't know. I think LVMH, if they acquired McQueen, depending on how this L'Oreal deal, because L'Oreal buying the Kering Beauty, the McQueen fragrances is part of Kering Beauty. So if LVMH buys McQueen, they're buying the fashion and not the beauty, but they would want the beauty because LVMH would make money with the beauty. So I don't think they would buy it. I don't think it makes sense for them to buy it, to be fair. So I don't even think they would. I'm trying to think, who would have a use for McQueen without the rights to the beauty? I don't know. It's not a good proposition. It's just not even a good deal. It just isn't a great deal, to be honest. So yeah, just wanted to touch on that quickly. The fact that L'Oreal acquired Kering Beauty, and I think this is a sign of the times and the financial situation that Kering is in, that they can't play long games anymore, and it shows a level of desperation that I don't think bodes well to the shareholders. I'm surprised there's still fragrance science to be done. That's funny. But anyway, last but not least, this is the last thing I wanted to talk about. This is a quick one. But I just wanted to touch on this. I know I made a reel about this, and I'll actually like play the reel, and then we can discuss further. But before I play the reel, this is a quote from Demna Vesalia talking about when he saw the Gucci archives in Florence for the first time as he prepared for his Kering presentation. He said, "I thought, this is a dream I didn't even dare to dream, because all those elements are there. I just have to protect them and modernize the idea of the coat. It's like you're a chef and you cook. At Balenciaga, I was telling Kering I'm a chef, but all I have is a potato and an onion. At Gucci, the amount of ingredients, it's like a playground. I have everything. So I don't have to focus on inventing or trying to put my DNA into the brand to become a business as well." So that was obviously a very controversial statement, because it's almost like him indirectly saying that he didn't have freedom to do what he really wanted to do at Balenciaga. That's one way to see it. I think another way of seeing it is that the Gucci archive has more variety. So the Balenciaga archive, if you're looking at like Cristobal Balenciaga himself, has less variety than the Gucci archive. So some people were arguing that actually what he means is just that it's easier, his job is easier at Gucci because there's more variety, and there isn't like a, you know, like Gucci can be anything, so he doesn't have to put a strong DNA. He can do like Tom Ford with Demna, or like Michele with Demna, which is kind of what he's been doing anyway. Whereas like at Balenciaga, he almost felt like he had to create his own DNA, right? Which he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. No one forced him. He chose to do that. So I just thought it was a bit of a strange thing to say coming from him. It's very, very, very odd. A very, very odd thing to say, to be honest. But let me play what I said about it on Instagram. So we have to talk about this statement from Demna about his time at Balenciaga, because this is actually insane. So he said, "At Balenciaga, I was telling Kering I'm a chef, but all I have is a potato and an onion. At Gucci, the amount of ingredients, it's like a playground. I have everything. So I don't have to focus on inventing or trying to put my DNA into the brand to become a business as well." First of all, I do think it's actually insane for Demna to imply that he didn't have enough resources at Balenciaga. This person in my Discord put it the best. He moved from a 2 Michelin star restaurant to a 3-star, and he's talking like he was working at McDonald's. That is quite accurate. That being said, in many regards, he's actually correct. Gucci makes significantly more money than Balenciaga, so you can only imagine the budgets are bigger for everything, the resources are more, and maybe he's just happy to see this amount of resources be at his disposal, and that's kind of what he was talking about. I also think it's very loaded for him to say that at Gucci there's more to work with, so it doesn't feel like he has to create complete design signatures. I don't know if I agree with that, because at the end of the day, we've only seen one collection from Demna at Gucci, but there are heavy references from Tom Ford, for example, with the unbuttoned shirts, the Alessandro Michele elements like the belt, the Tom Ford leather jacket, pussy bow blouses that we associate with Alessandro Michele, horsebit heels that are once again a reference to Tom Ford. I think you get the point. And so what he's doing at Gucci is not that different in principle to what he was doing at Balenciaga. At Balenciaga, he was taking very common Balenciaga shapes, like a cocoon shape, and transporting that into the realm of parka jackets and puffer jackets. He would use Balenciaga shapes, but then kind of change the fabrics and ask the question, why can't denim be couture? Considering that when haute couture was in its heyday in the 20th century, people actually had places that they could wear that stuff to. Nowadays, we wear jeans a lot. We wear puffer jackets. We wear parka jackets. So it's looking at how can we modernize this and make it sort of this modern day couture in a way. Balenciaga had endless budgets. Let's be honest. The shows were huge. Loads of money was spent on the shows. I mean, look at the crazy sets, the campaigns, the people they had in the campaigns, the different films that they made, the licenses that they got to create certain things. They had insane budgets at Balenciaga. And so considering all of this, if Demna is truly saying that at Balenciaga all he had was a potato and an onion, while like Gucci has all the ingredients a chef could ever need. I'm looking forward to this collection in February. So we not me saying I'm looking forward to the collection, considering he's saying all I had was an onion and yeah. Let me see what you guys are saying. At the very least, he could have said he had scallions and steak. Even the analogy of vegetables he's using doesn't even fit what he had handed over to him over there. Yeah, he's saying at Balenciaga it was a balancing act of building the brand while making new stuff. But do you know what's funny though? So why I was just playing devil's advocate, like arguing for two sides. I just don't agree with what he said, to be honest, if I'm giving my own opinion, because it's like, at the end of the day, as a designer, you have to create something new. So if all he does at Gucci is just keep referencing Michele and Tom Ford, which is kind of what he did with his like first collection, which is not really his first collection, whatever, people are eventually going to be like, bro, you're just copying the archives. Like, why are you even here? That's what people will say. So he still will have to push Gucci forward in some sort of way, or he's going to end up with the same thing that he had at Balenciaga, right? So at Balenciaga, yes, he had to come up with his own ideas, but he was still using the Balenciaga silhouettes. He was still using, you know, Balenciaga ideas. So he's doing the same thing at Gucci. It's not any different. So for him to say, you know, at one place I only had a potato and an onion, and at Gucci I have all the ingredients, I just don't know truly what he means by that, because it just doesn't make any sense to me. It's like everything you did at Balenciaga, you're going to have to do that at Gucci. It might be easier at Gucci because there are more resources and you can just kind of lean into the Tom Ford stuff, but you're doing the same job. You're literally doing the same thing. I try to not read too much into what Demna says, because sometimes he just be saying shit in interviews. I mean, that is true too. We've already talked about how many things Demna says that actually he didn't mean it or don't make sense. So I'll hold my hands up and say you are correct in that regard. Define new. Not like he has to reinvent the wheel, but it's like he has to kind of recreate Demna codes. Sorry, recreate Gucci codes in a Demna way. Whether that's the horsebit loafer, or, you know, talking about saddlery, or, you know, because Gucci himself was a busboy at the Savoy Hotel, so maybe, you know, kind of doing research into what were people wearing at the Savoy back then. You know, there's different ways he can like reinvent the wheel without having to create something entirely new. What I mean by new is more like fresh is a better word. Like something we haven't seen at Gucci before. Not necessarily something we haven't seen at all, but just through the Demna lens, right? He's still going to have to do that at Gucci, or people just won't care. Balenciaga was also making waves in that space before he arrived. It wasn't as if he took over a nobody. I remember the arena sneakers having a huge moment about 15 years ago. Yeah, I mean, Nicolas Ghesquière, I mean, the city bag is Nicolas Ghesquière, the arenas is Nicolas Ghesquière, the Balenciaga runners, the pointy ones, is Nicolas Ghesquière. Like, Nicolas Ghesquière, we can talk about the amazing things that he did at Balenciaga, but then we can just talk about the products that actually flew off the shelves. There were loads. So, yeah, this idea that, you know, because I know a lot of Demna stands are like, Demna made Balenciaga, and it literally gives me like a headache when people say that. But yeah, that's what I think about that. But yeah, that's the story about Demna, and just my thoughts on what he said that I wanted to touch on briefly. You guys let me know if there's any other questions you want to ask before I take my leave. Let me see if you guys have any other questions. See, any questions? The list index. You know what? Let me add it to my list, because I haven't actually seen it. I've been so busy, I haven't actually looked at it. So I don't have any thoughts. I'll get back to you on that one once I have looked at it. Maybe I'll like react to it on a stream like I normally do with a lot of the indexes. How are you and how was your day? My day was, wait, let me full screen. So my day was, I spent all day traveling, to be honest. I had 2 flights. I'm now in Italy. I'm judging a fashion award in Italy, the International Talent Support. So that's always fun. Looking at like emerging designers' work and like studying it and seeing kind of what their ideas are and stuff. So yeah, if anything, I'm just tired. And I have to be, it's now 3 a.m. I have to be up by 8:30. So that's how my day is going. He said I lived that fast life. Luke, I'm not talking about this publicly, obviously. So if you're asking me these kind of questions, I'm just going to act like I don't see it. It was great. It was great seeing you after so long. Finally bought my copy of How Luxury Lost Its Luster. Yay! I hope they're paying you royalties. No, they're not. I don't mind. I don't need to get royalties. At the end of the day, it's a good book that I think everyone should buy if you have the means to. So, yeah, I just think it's a really good book. So why not buy it? Whether I get royalties or not. And please don't go back to the door of the hotel room next door. Could be some sketchy rando. Let them keep knocking. They stopped knocking. I haven't heard them knock for a while, actually. Maybe after they saw a big black man knock on their door, they're like, After they look through the keyhole, they're like, maybe I shouldn't have been banging on his wall. Because I knocked on it, they were banging the wall. And I went outside and I knocked on their door. I was knocking and there was no response, silence. And then the second I walked back into my room, no more banging on the wall. It's very interesting. How many stars is this hotel? I have no idea. Let me check. Let me check my phone 1 second. Let's have a look. Someone said it's giving 4-star minimum from the decor. Okay. Let me have a look. Because I'm so tired, I haven't even been able to look at the hotel, anything. I just came, hopped straight into the stream, and I was like, after I stream, straight to bed. So let's see. Okay, it's a 4-star hotel. So you are spot on, Canuck. Canuck Catwalk, you are spot on. It's a 4-star hotel. Oh damn, have you ever judged for scholarships? Yes, so I judge New Gen for the British Fashion Council. I'm a judge on the International Talent Support, the ITS Award. Those are like the 2 main ones. I've judged for like different other things here and there, but the 2 main ones that I do consistently is New Gen for the BFC and then International Talent Support. Like every year, like I do it. So yeah. And ITS, for people that don't know, there's been some amazing alumni. The last person that won it was Maximilian Reyna. In the past, Demna has won it. Glenn Martins has won it. So quite some big designers have won it early in their career. So it's like a good stepping stone because most designers that win the ITS award go on to do like really big things. Let's just say I know my boutique hotels. Fair enough. Fair enough. What's the thread count on the sheets? I have no idea. I haven't even touched the sheets. I mean, I'm not sure if you guys can see, but like, it's like I haven't even sat on the bed yet. So I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. Raina is a tutor on my course. Yeah, so on my flight from London, Raina was on my flight, so we were actually speaking most of the flight, to be honest. And he told me that, because I told him I lecture CSM MA journalism, and he was like, "Oh, I lecture for the foundation course." So I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." I was like, "You probably teach Luke," and he was like, "Who's Luke?" And I was like, "Luke is a skinny white guy." Skinny white guy. He's like really opinionated. It's like, who's that? I was like, skinny white guy, really opinionated. I definitely said that. I definitely said that. Luke, stop fighting it. You're not white ethnically, but you look white. Like, if I was to describe you, I'm not going to describe you as a skinny Arab man, because you don't look like, it's not a helpful description, because like if someone says skinny Arab man, you expect to see someone that is more not white passing looking. You're expecting to see, like, in my mind, when I think of someone who's like Arab, I think of like my friends who are like from the Middle East, like my friends that are from Oman. Like, that's what I envision. So yeah. Like, Luke, you're white passing as hell. Like, no one is going to look at you on the street and think that you're Arab. This is not going to happen. You do not look Mediterranean. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry to burst your bubble, but you don't look Mediterranean. I was in Saks Fifth this week, and a salesperson told me it's the worst season they had since COVID. Damn. Damn, that's crazy. Luke, do you think you look like a Greek baddie? That's crazy. Oh my God, that's funny. That actually gave me a really good laugh. He's like, I look like I'm, at least like, give me, in fact, I can give you Greece, but if you're trying to say you're Mediterranean in the sense of like, I don't know, like Turkey, or like that kind of Mediterranean, no sir. Like, no sir. I've always been told I look like my ethnicity. Really? By who, though? By who? The answer to this question is very important. Very, very important. By white people. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. Have you discussed the Balmain situation? Not really. I talked about it earlier, like the fact that there's a new creative director at Balmain, but that was as far as I mentioned. But I mean, you've probably seen people's videos online about the background of the designer and the fact that he worked at Balenciaga and like all these other things. So I think people are aware at this point, to be honest. I don't even think it needs coverage from me at this point. Yeah, I don't think it warrants coverage from me. Okay, people are actually asking me about the creative director. You want me to talk about the creative director? There isn't really much to say. I mean, his name is, what, Antonin Tron? Um, yeah, he's taking over from Olivier Rousteing. He has a label called Atleen. I don't know how to pronounce it. Like Atleen. Um, it's like renowned for like the way he manipulates jersey. He's had like some really good reviews in the past. He's obviously a big fan of Balmain and what Olivier Rousteing has been doing there all this while. He studied fashion design at the Royal Academy of Fine Arts in Antwerp. He worked at Balenciaga when Nicolas Ghesquière was there, and then he worked alongside Alexander Wang, and then he worked alongside Demna. So he was at Balenciaga for quite a while, like quite a long time. He saw all the different eras. Then he had a stint at Givenchy. He's worked at Raf Simons. He's worked at Louis Vuitton. And his most recent job was a role at Saint Laurent. But apart from that, there's nothing more really. Like that's his resume. He's been around for a long time. Definitely qualified for the role. So I'm just interested to see what he does, to be honest. But yeah, very experienced, definitely qualified. There's nothing more to say there. Like, he deserves to be in that role. I'm just curious to see what he does. It seems like Vaccarello is the only one that survived all the crazy changes of creative directors. A few designers survived, but Vaccarello being one of the more prominent ones. Damn, who hasn't he worked for? He worked with Wang and Dem. It's so funny that you call Demna Dem. Yes, I went to the Barbican Dirty Looks exhibit. I found it kind of underwhelming. Luke, I'm curious to get your thoughts if you've been. What did you think of the exhibition? I thought it was quite underwhelming, to be honest. I didn't think it was that great. And I went on opening night too, but it just wasn't that great. Okay, yeah, really underwhelming. Yeah, exactly what I thought. Yeah, that's the point. It's too small. That's what I thought too. So you can't really build the proper narrative because there's not that much there. Like you said, lots of missing collections, too many designers who shouldn't have been there. Yeah, I thought it was really underwhelming. What's the most fun thing in fashion for you right now? Generally, or like in terms of like something happening? Because generally, like, what do I enjoy or what do I get the most fun with? I think is just like learning about new designers and learning about people's work. You guys have seen, I've probably not been streaming a lot because I've been traveling everywhere, interviewing designers and like interviewing people about their work and stuff. And I went to like Ireland Fashion Week and Barcelona Fashion Week and stuff. Because I don't want to perpetuate what people do in fashion where everything has to revolve around London, Paris, Milan. So I made a deliberate effort to try to go to like emerging regions. That's why I went to Ireland Fashion Week. Like, I was the only person that went to Ireland Fashion Week, by the way. There was no international press. Outside me, one person from Vogue, and there was like one other person. But as far as like people that make content goes, it was only me. Because obviously there's no pay. I genuinely like went to, Ireland, to Dublin to like document Ireland Fashion Week. It was the first one as well, which is quite historic. And it was really cool. It was run by a woman called Ashley, who was an executive at Pooch. So obviously she has connections, worked in Paris for a long time. And yeah, it was really great. The Ireland Fashion Week was such a great time. Like it was amazing. And yeah, that's kind of what, because I don't make a lot of money from Patreon. For full transparency, I think I make like maybe like £400 a month from Patreon. So I normally use the Patreon money to buy books because I'm doing book clubs like right now. I know I haven't posted on Patreon for a while, but I am working on the next book club, which is The Beautiful Fall. Let me show you guys my phone so you can see, because these things take time. I'm actually writing notes on my phone. Let me show you guys. Let me see. Okay, yeah, these are my notes that I've been making as I've been reading through the book. So you can see how many notes I've made. So normally with Patreon money, I just either use it to buy books so I can do fashion book clubs, or travel to like emerging. So like a lot of the Patreon money that I've been saving up was used to go to Island Fashion Week because, like I said, it wasn't paid for. We paid for it, but it was definitely worth it. Like documenting fashion that no one else documents. Like no one else documented it. I honestly kind of prefer you being busy in real life with a normal job because it keeps you in touch with the fashion world, as opposed to being an annoying YouTube influencer. Normal being your consulting gigs with fashion houses and whatever. Yeah, I guess it's true because in a way, because some videos that I'm going to make on Patreon, for example, is like I'm going to make a Patreon podcast on my experience on Island Fashion Week and what I learnt. Same as Barcelona Fashion Week. But you are correct because it allows me to give you guys more first-hand insights. But I've always been someone that worked in the fashion industry alongside making content online. I think that's kind of what makes my content a bit different because I'm always coming from the perspective of someone that is on the inside that makes content rather than someone that makes content but doesn't work in fashion or like never worked in fashion or whatever. So yeah, I mean, even now, I'm at the ITS, I'm judging the ITS award, and I'll show you guys the people that are also judging alongside. Because these are like people that I'm going to be speaking to my whole time here. Because you have like Ursula, who is like, I don't know if you guys know who Ursula is actually, but Ursula is like amazing. But like, you have Ursula de Castro, who I absolutely love. Ursula, for those of you that actually don't know, is like a big bastion of sustainability. She's a like sustainability consultant. She works with like a lot of luxury brands on like how to do their sustainability, and she's one of the co-founders of Fashion Revolution, which is like really famous. You have like people like Mateo Ward. You have like people from different brands like the Ferragamo Foundation. You have Barbara, who of course like runs it. So yeah, Stavros is still on New Gen, and Mandy, they're still on New Gen. Yep, both of them. That photo of you is yassified. That's funny. You have Tom, who is Lady Gaga's stylist. So really strong team. Sarah, who literally like huge in the Italian fashion journalism space. So yeah, this is the thing about working within it. You can always bring insights back into your audience. So I think that's kind of what makes my content a bit different. Because I think everyone else that kind of works deep in the fashion industry, none of them are really open to an audience in the way that I am, right? Yeah, I'm trying to think, is there anyone who like works and consults constantly in fashion that like streams and does stuff like that? I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Yeah, just generally, but if you have any smaller brands you're looking at or specific pieces, I thought the Island Fashion Week stuff was really cool to see. Yeah, hopefully, and that's kind of, so when you guys pay for my Patreon, that's where the money is going, by the way, just so you guys know. I'm not like using people's money to buy a Ferrari. Because I know sometimes people think that like people, maybe some people do, to be fair. Some people make like millions on Patreon and like they're just like buying a Ferrari. Like literally, this is my Patreon tab. Like you can see it. Membership, £452 a month. So I'm not like some like millionaire. I'm not taking people's money and like cashing out. And what if you bought a Ferrari, you put in the work? So I personally, if I was ever to buy a Ferrari or Porsche 911, it wouldn't be with people's Patreon money. I think Patreon, at least when I started Patreon, I started it specifically with the goal of using it to further either my fashion knowledge, because then that's I'm relaying it back to the audience, or to further everyone else's knowledge, whether that's, like I said, buying books, doing the book clubs, or using it to travel to different regions that aren't, supported as much, right? So that's kind of what I would always use that money for. If I want to buy Ferraris, that has to come from my consulting work, or when I get paid by brands to cover things or whatever. But not, yeah, not the Patreon money. The Patreon money is sacred. It just makes me feel bad. Like, people are like paying money for me to like use to like give people like good content, right? So that's what I'm going to use it for. Said he's gonna hide that shit as soon as he starts making 10K a month. But we shall know because he's decked out in Andy pieces. Nah, I'm too transparent for that. When I'm making 10K, I'll show you the same way. The same way I showed you, you'll see. You said I'm gonna start being decked out in Andy. I mean, I'm already decked out in Andy. Because I've been collecting Andy since I was like 19. I'm like I'm literally turning 28 in 2 days. Like, my birthday is on the 15th. So I've been collecting Andy for damn near 10 years. Is there any other places you'll visit in 2026 for fashion that's not the big main ones? It honestly just depends on like, because the Island Fashion Week, we had to save up for that for a bit, because I went with Micah. So we had to save for a bit with the Patreon money, but it just depends where my Patreon is next year. It also depends like what is actually happening. One thing that I'm looking to go to, I saw that like Romania has a fashion week that's like really buzzing right now. So one I really want to go to is Romania Fashion Week. I think it's in Bucharest. I think it's Bucharest Fashion Week, not Romania Fashion Week. That would be interesting to go to. And if you guys see any like interesting emerging fashion weeks or events, let me know also, and I'll look into it and see if like it's something interesting to cover, to be honest. Because the response, I didn't know what the response would be from me going to Island Fashion Week, especially because no one was talking about it and no one went. But it seemed like people really, really enjoyed that content. So I kind of want to bring more of that content to people. So that's kind of the plan next year. So Bucharest Fashion Week is definitely in the cards, and we have to see what else is like doable next year. Let me just change mics quickly because this mic is about to die. Let me just turn this mic on. All right. Do a little bit of a mic switcheroo. Turn the other one off. All right, perfect. Everyone's saying they knew I was a Scorpio. What gave it away? How did you know I was a Scorpio? What makes it so obvious? What makes it so... Do I give off Scorpio energy? Is that what you guys are trying to say? Like, I just give off Scorpio? That's quite funny, to be honest. The Buchanan spice. Damn. Ooh, just needed a sip of water. Been talking for so long. It's damn near over 3 hours. Scorpios love and D. Is that a proven Is that a proven theory? Is that a proven theory? Yeah, R.I.P. Marina Yee, by the way. Facts. R.I.P. Marina Yee. And it's so sad because I was going to meet her um, in March. Because in March, they're doing... they have an Antwerp 6 exhibition in Antwerp in the Miu Miu Museum. And apparently, all of them, all the 6 were going to have a reunion there. And it was so sad that, like, she passed. And it's like, I don't know how long it's been since all of them met, like, in the same place. So, yeah, R.I.P. Marina Yee. She's had an amazing legacy, and her legacy will continue to live on, for sure. I mean, the Antwerp 6 is, like, cemented in fashion. It's, like, not, yeah. But anyway, guys, any last thoughts? Let me get some 3 hours of sleep or whatever, however many hours I can get in before. I really want Belgium to regain its crown. Yeah, I mean, the Belgian designers like A.F. van der Vorst and like the brands like A.F. van der Vorst and like obviously the Antwerp 6. You have Margiela, of course. You have there's so many, like even the smaller ones like Yan Yan Van Escher. All of them just stand for something that's so genuine and like unique and sincere. Like all of them are like that. Are we counting Demna as a Belgian designer? He just went to school there. I don't know if you can count him as a Belgian designer. Yeah, Yogi Parsons. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my god. There's even someone big that I'm forgetting in my mind. Who is a like... There's someone who's like big who I've like literally forgotten. Who is a big like... There's so many of them though. Like there's so many like sensational. Yeah, Raf Simons. There we go. Raf Simons. How could we forget Raf Simons? Yeah, I was like, there's like a big designer that I'm forget like Raf. Yeah. Shout out to Belgium, man. They had a time, they had an era of just churning out sensational designer after sensational designer. They took the fashion world by storm. Yeah, even Veronique. There's still someone I'm forgetting. I feel like there's another big name that I'm not remembering from Belgium. I need to think when it comes to me. Not gonna lie, Walter Van Beirendonck lost a bit of respect in my mind by the virtue of talking shit about Virgil. I know you're a lot more forgiving. Yeah, I feel you. That's fair enough, to be fair. Learned about it on your stream, by the way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the thing about like those Antwerp designers, their aesthetics are also different. So it's like, it's impossible for you to really like all of their work. Like I appreciate all of their work, and I actually wear Walter Van Beirendonck, which is, people don't believe me when I say that because it's like, I like Andy and I wear all black most of the time. So people are like, how could you possibly wear Walter Van Beirendonck? It's like I just wear the black Walter Van Beirendonck pieces. I wear the black cap with the red W, or I wear the long coat with like the crazy hands on the inside, not on the outside, and like the collar detail, the frilly collar details on the coat. Like I do actually wear Walter Van Beirendonck, to be fair. I just like channel it into my all black sensibilities. Yeah. So Walter does make a lot of unwearable items, but I also think which is why I end up buying a few of his pieces. He makes like really fun pieces, like when he does slightly more commercial pieces that they're not like super commercial and they're kind of like interesting. So I low-key think that Walter is kind of underrated. I think people, because like let me see. So like he'll make like these loafers, for example, that I would never wear. Like he'll make like these crazy ass loafers that I would never wear. But then he'll make like a coat like this that has a weird shape, but when you wear it, it kind of looks cool. Or like the trousers. And he does a lot of like tailoring. And I think his tailoring actually looks really good. Like, yeah, like Walter Van Berendock. So his signature tailoring is like these ultra tiny lapels, right? Where, and I like the shape. He normally sometimes has like padded shoulders. I think he does really good tailoring. I think it's also really underrated. So I think that's the thing about Walter. For every like crazy sort of like unwearable, like cartoony thing, there's something that's actually really interesting. Like I would wear this, for example, like a shirt but with the flower detail. So he has like obviously the hats. I wear the hats all the time. So he just does like really cool stuff. And that's the thing. That's why I don't have any loyalty to brands, because I think that if you have too much loyalty to brands, you just miss out on like really interesting pieces. Like there's designers that like Walter that I can look at and be like, most of it isn't for me, but then I can still see some pieces and be like, oh, that's really interesting. I would wear that. So that's how I feel about almost every brand. That's why when I go shopping, I just go through everything. I don't go to, I'm an Andy fan, so let me check out Andy first and not look at anything else. I don't shop that way. That's how the row customers shop. And on that note, I'm ending the stream. And thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next stream. I won't be back until Friday, but like Friday late at night. And then Saturday is my birthday, so obviously I won't be streaming, so I'll probably be back on Sunday. It's very likely I'll be back on Sunday. But thank you very much for tuning in, like I said earlier, and I'll see you guys in the next stream. Thank you very much for tuning in,